Seven, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1.
You'll never have the sacred stone.
All right, welcome back into another edition of the Vegas Squares podcast. We're sitting here in studio with Spike. Spike's been, you haven't been on a few podcasts. I know it's been a crazy week for all of us, but the Tonys are out of town, and we're sitting here old school style. We got a lot to talk about. We got NHL playoffs. We got NFL draft, fun things coming up. Just a general, if you had to give one word on the NHL playoffs right now, Spike, what would you use that word? What word would you use?
Chaos.
Yeah, that's a good one.
Which is, and I love chaos, and I usually do like March Madness brackets based on chaos. I want to see number ones get upset. I want to see
You got that.
the underdogs win out.
Got all that too.
And for these playoffs, it has been such a treat to watch the chaos that has unfolded, especially with all four division winners going down in the first round. Oh, I've loved it. I've absolutely. I obviously didn't like the results of the Knights, but otherwise it's been a phenomenal playoffs.
Yeah, I would say chaos is the right word to use because it's just been like you said, unpredictable. I would say the only person I know who I would have to give credit to as far as betting angles on the series would be Tony Johnson. I mean, he literally picked all underdogs, and this was the year to do it. This was the year to do it.
Yeah, no, he did phenomenal. I know in our bracket, I got, I think, 2 out of the 8 division winners right. I had the Islanders.
I got 3.
Yeah, I had the Islanders and the Bruins. And the rest I got wrong. I've individual game-wise, I've been doing phenomenal this playoff so far. But
shout out to Token Tony because he got 0 of the 8 series. He was literally holding on by a thread with the Capitals going to Game 7 into double overtime, and he got a big O burger. Is that hard to? That's got to be hard to do too.
Yeah, no, that's. I feel like there should be some kind of consolation prize for that because
that's like I've heard in some like offshore websites if you brick every single leg of your parlay, they pay you like a little rake back. I've heard that. I can't confirm.
I've seen it in Keno where if you pick 20 numbers and get 0, you get like $500 on a $1 bet.
Shit.
Yeah.
That's not bad.
Yeah. No, it's not, but I mean, it's damn near impossible to do.
It's just as impossible to hit all 20 numbers.
Exactly.
I would say it's almost as possible to hit all 20 numbers as it is to hit 0 numbers on a board like that. But let's thank the sponsors, 12 Ounce Sports Radio, ChaiPoker.com, Eric on the Web Productions, and Vegas Puckline Apparel. Like I said, we're going to talk some NFL draft in this podcast. We're going to talk some NHL playoffs. So sit back, buckle in, and let's just start with those playoffs. I mean, yes, let's start with the Knights. Obviously, it's been 1 week at this point since we've gotten screwed, I guess. I don't know what to say with that. I mean, we got the game was altered against the Knights in a move that I still, again, I've read a lot of things. I mean, like you said, most of the Sharks fans are like, move on. You got to take your lumps in the NHL. I don't buy this. Like, you need to experience suffering before you're allowed to experience victory.
Yeah, there's been a few things that have bothered me about this game. The one more general theme is on some of the pages that I read, Facebook hockey fan pages, not just Knights fan, but like entire league fan pages. On Reddit and all these other sites, once Vegas did really, really well last year, they started slamming the Knights and saying, this is bad look for the league, this is bad look for the draft.
Too good, too fast.
And my argument has always been, it's not that the Knights had an unfair advantage in the draft, it's that the NHL fixed shitty expansion draft rules. There is no reason to make an expansion draft team bad. Like, it just doesn't make any sense from a business perspective, from a sporting perspective.
Why do you want a league? Why do you want a league of fans, especially a league of fans in Vegas, who I believe, if you read what people write, if they would have been bad out of the gate, this fan base would be a third of the size.
Probably,
and who's that benefiting?
Right, exactly, and for somebody like Foley coming in and ponying up so much money for the team, for the naming right, for everything else, to go and then give them a shitty team where they have to be bad for 20 years, it doesn't make any sense. So I'm glad the league finally changed it. Yes, obviously, being in Vegas when this was happening, that I sound biased about it. Yeah, but it's never made any sense to me. Like, I've never understood it when the Wild came in, when Columbus came in, when San Jose, like when all these other expansion teams have come in the past and they've struggled for years and years. Columbus won their first playoff series this year. Like, these are not things that make sense to me at all. So I'm glad that they finally fixed it. And now those same pages are saying now that Vegas has suffered a little bit, other fans of other teams like Vegas more now because there has been suffering. Blowing a 3-1 series lead, blowing a 3-0 game lead in Game 7.
Third period with 10 minutes left.
Yeah, so like these sorts of things are now bringing people back into the Vegas fold. A lot of them still don't like Vegas for various reasons, whatever. But
not only that, you talk about the expansion draft. Literally every prediction after the expansion draft, whether it's amateur or professional, was like, God, this night's team's going to be bad.
Oh yeah.
So you even believed. How can you come back? Again, let's go back to 2017. How can you come back 6-8 months later in June when this team had defied all odds and go, well, they were gifted a team?
Yeah, no.
When 8 months before, you're like, well, this is just pure shit, and this is exactly how expansion draft should go.
Yeah, and this is revisionist history by everybody who's ever said it. And my line has always been, if Seattle's getting the exact same expansion draft rules, except for the fact that Vegas will be immune.
Can't touch the Knights, yeah.
But Seattle will have the same expansion draft rules. If they don't make the playoffs, everybody who said that the draft rules have been unfair to Vegas
should shut the fuck up.
Should just, they need to stop talking hockey. They need to stop following hockey. They need to just leave the sport alone because they clearly don't know what they're talking about.
Correct. And Seattle's another key city, no pun intended, because, look, we talked about Vegas, and you didn't want Vegas. Now, did we expect Vegas to make a run to the Cup final? No, but, to even be in contention for a playoff spot would have been a successful season in bringing this fan base. Obviously, October 1st really helped it. But if they would have just been on the cusp of an 8th seed or something like that, it still would have been big for the city. Obviously, going to the final is even larger for the city, although I do remain that may have been it sounds crazy, and I don't fall into the camp of you need to suffer, but I think that going to the Cup final last year may have been almost a right of being spoiled as a Vegas Knight fan.
No, you're absolutely right, but the flip side is if the 2018 or the season ending in 2019 had been Vegas's first season, where they finished 3rd in the division, 6th in the Western Conference, and lost in Game 7 of the first round.
It would have been a miraculous season.
It would have been a miraculous season. I think you still get as big a fan base in Vegas as you would have based on the results last year.
Sure, if this was the first year, absolutely.
Yeah, so,
that's what I'm saying. Competing for a wild card, being on the cusp, or whatever, being in that spot would have been similar to something like this. 93 points in an expansion year would have been great.
Oh, absolutely. And, this is, I think, exactly not only what the team needed in order, in terms of, getting a little bit more.
That second line was amazing.
Oh, the second line was fantastic. Putting all this deep run together last year, putting a good run together this year, like these are the kinds of things that can really spark and energize a fan base, and I'm happy that it kind of went this way.
Yeah, absolutely. I wasn't rooting for them to be bad, but I just what my comment means is basically like I see over the course of this second year, I think we had our first 4 or 5 game losing streak. The Knights did.
Yep.
And they're talking about firing Gallant and trading X, trading Y, and it's like, you guys, this is the trials and tribulations. What you experienced last year with this team isn't going to happen every year, no matter how good or bad your team is. You're going to have skids, and I just could see the fan base here, who most of them are new, and most of them maybe have even watched hockey, but since they've moved out to the desert, maybe have lost a little bit because we didn't have anything, and the closest team was 4 or 5 hours away. But, just to have, you're going to have tribulations, and to see people just like, we've got to get rid of Gallant after a 5-game losing streak, that's just a horrendous way to think about things. If you want to look at a silver lining, or if you want to look at this from a devil's advocate position, This is the worst season in Golden Knights history.
Yeah, no, you're absolutely right, and I think next year they'll be able to correct some of the shortcomings, like some of the slowness on defense. Some of the
A lot of young guys could be coming up this year.
Yeah, lack of production from the third and even fourth lines. Fleury having sort of a bad streak in the middle of the season when he got hurt. Subban was pretty ineffective this year for a long time. He finally got his act together sometime around the All-Star break.
Yeah.
I think there are corrections to be made. I think obviously the front office has some difficult decisions to make as far as what to do about the center position, because
a little cap strap too.
Yeah, the cap is going to be an issue with Cody Glass about ready to come up. They really have 6 centers competing for 4 spots. So it's going to be an interesting offseason. I'm curious to see how everything's going to shake out for next year. But for this year, they put up a good fight. They we can talk about that blown call in Game 7 all we want, but the fact of the matter is that they should have won Game 5, they should have won Game 6, and they shouldn't have given up 4 goals on the major
power play.
Yeah, which I think and people are asking, like, a lot of these games have names. Like, we talk in football, there's the catch, the fumble, this, that, and the other thing. I think for Knights fans, if we just refer to Game 7 as the major, people are going to know what you're talking about. People are going to understand.
It's either that or the fake check.
Yeah.
Instead of like the cross check or the major is probably pretty good, quick reference, especially if you're talking Golden Knight fan to Golden Knight fan.
Oh, absolutely.
But just to get them riled up, we'll talk about the Golden Knights offseason a little bit later in the podcast, and obviously down the road during the summer, because, like you said, there is a lot of potential movement, a lot of different things that McPhee's going to have his hands full. He's definitely going to be busy this summer trying to figure out how to put the pieces in that puzzle. But let's talk about more of these playoff series. We can talk about the first rounds. Calgary, that was a big shock. Getting beat 4-1 after looking pretty dominant in the first game, and then it was just like they fell apart. A lot of people want to blame Mike Smith, but I thought he had a pretty good series in that one.
Yeah, Smith looked fine. I think his defense fell apart, but I think the real problem for Calgary was just the offense.
No scoring.
Yeah, they just died. I don't know if that was a tribute to Colorado's defense or if Calgary's offense couldn't handle the pressure of being in the play. Like, I don't know what the factor was, but there was just something about this series where nothing that Calgary did worked, and everything that Colorado did worked.
It seemed like the longer the games went, because there were a few overtime games in this series, the longer it stuck around, the more it favored Colorado, just because they were literally running that first line out there in every advantageous situation.
Yeah, and
that's all they have, pretty much. And no disrespect to Colorado for advancing. They played great hockey. I think they're in over their heads against San Jose, whether you may disagree with me in that one. I believe that the momentum from San Jose's Game 7 and that whole series coming back from 3-1, I believe that they're going to the final, and that's a conversation for another time. But I think they're definitely not going to have their hands full with Colorado in this series.
Yeah, no, I think you're right. And the flip side is I think Colorado wipes Vegas off the ice if the two of them had gotten together. So. But I think you're right, and I think part of the problem for Colorado is exactly what we saw the problem with the Winnipeg Jets in last year's playoffs, where Paul Maurice threw out that first line over and over and over and over again, and when they got to the conference final against Vegas,
tired as hell.
Yeah, that first line had nothing left in the tank, which is why Vegas was able to win in 5 games. It didn't even go
didn't
longer
feel competitive.
than that.
That first game was close, and then everything else didn't feel competitive in that series. Yeah.
So, and I think we're going to see the same thing with Colorado this year, with San Jose, especially with Martin Jones finally getting his swagger back for San Jose. I mean, he looked fucking dreadful in those 3 games against Vegas.
I mean, in a 7-game series, you get pulled. I think he got pulled twice, right?
Twice, yeah.
I mean, he's been pulled 5 times in 15 appearances versus the Knights.
Yeah.
I don't know.
It might even be more than that. I think it's 6 times.
Is it 6 times or 15? Because I know they faced each other 17 times, and Dell's been in the net for 2.
Yeah.
So I think he's been 5 or 6 out of 15. That's not a good ratio.
No, definitively not. Like, I don't know what Martin Jones's issue is with the Knights. I don't know if it's the crowd in Vegas. I don't know what.
At the same time, you look at that Game 6 where he had 58 saves. Not a lot of great shots, but 58 saves is 58 saves.
Yeah, no, absolutely. But getting them to double overtime is tough for any goalie. So, especially for somebody that had been getting his brains beaten in shortly before that, to pull off a game like that, all the credit in the world to him. But he's got to play consistently if they want to make a deep run.
Sure, absolutely, yeah, absolutely. And having Vlasic back, I mean, we saw it in the night series. When Vlasic played, the Sharks were 4-0.
Yeah, and this is why when Vegas and San Jose started, I said Vegas in 5. Maybe they sweep. I know you and Token were saying that this series goes 7s. I thought you were fucking crazy. Because
you were looking right after Game 4.
Jones and Dell, the two of Jones was the second to worst goalie in the playoffs this year, and the only one that was worse was Dell. Mm-hmm. When you talk goals against, save percentage, and the way that they looked, especially coming down the stretch, they looked dreadful. I thought between that, the fact that Burns is a defensive liability. He's only a defenseman so that he can be on the ice more often than other forwards.
Definitely hurt.
EK is about 60%, and when Vlasic went down in Game 2, I said San Jose has nobody else because their number 6 defenseman, who they then had to bring in number 7 and number 8 when guys were getting hurt, their number 6 defenseman is that guy Ryan, number 47 or 48.
Dylan Ryan?
Yeah, I don't know his first name. But in a double overtime game, as a defenseman, dude got 7.5 minutes of ice time. That's how little DeBoer trusts this guy on the ice. I was like, San Jose's defense will not have any gas left for Vegas, especially in a series that goes 7 games. And then more power to them. They found a way to win, even just putting up Burns and hurt EK all the time.
Well, I mean, Carlson still had, on the offensive end, he still had 9 assists in the series, including the series clincher, which I was worried about because I was watching them. All 4 guys standing in the defensive zone for the Knights were coming in on a guy who can't skate worth a fucking damn because his ankle's fucked up.
Yeah.
And they still fell for the trap, and he's still a good hockey player even with 60% of them.
Oh, 60% of EK is probably better than...
Probably better than Derek England.
For God's sake. I was joking with somebody about how slow Derek England is, not only on his skates, but his shots. I'm like, there's probably a dozen players in this league that can outskate a Derek England slap shot. And if Derek England beats another skater in a foot race, that player is automatically designated to the AHL. Like I'm pretty sure that's written into the collective bargaining agreement.
Let's go ECHL just to make them really painful.
But hurt EK is still better than probably even like 60% of the defensemen in the NHL. Like he's still that good with his stick, with his positioning, with his passing, and everything else. So he really, I mean, he did a great job. Credit to Burns, who actually played a good defensive series. He had a bunch of great spots where he was stopping pucks and not giving up the turnovers or
getting too aggressive.
Yeah, not letting offensive players get behind him like he usually does. So,
well, the crazy thing is, you got to think he's the key to this whole series. Game 1, he puts one off of Pavelski's face, which turns into Pavelski cutting his own face on his newfangled mask, which gets him the major penalty. He's the MVP of the series.
Burns is a genius.
Yeah, he's a genius. Quick wrap-ups here on Winnipeg and St. Louis. St. Louis has been playing the best hockey outside of Tampa left in the regular season. I believe actually they had one more point than Tampa since January 1st. They were in dead last place. I looked up the odds. You could have gotten the St. Louis Blues at 100-1 on January 1st. How sick is that? Yeah, I know, right?
Yeah, Binnington's been such a surprise. Actually,
it's about when he took over. Yeah.
Was named as a finalist for the Calder, so more power to him.
26-7-2.
Yeah, and that's it's unbelievable for a rookie goalie to come in with such little experience and not only play well, but play so
far
goddamn
above
well,
expectations,
and play that well in the playoffs and continue on in the playoffs. He didn't look great in Saturday's game against Dallas, where Dallas was able to steal Game 2 in St. Louis. But these are the kinds of things that St. Louis needed in order to advance, because they've got the scoring, they've got the defense. They just needed that goalie because Allen was so streaky.
Yeah, that's true. He was a very good goalie when he was on, and very, very bad when he was off.
It was just
Martin Jones style.
Yeah, it was just tough to figure out what was going to happen with Allen. So
what do you... Oh, go ahead.
No, I was just going to say, so, I mean, this Dallas-St. Louis series, to me, is going to be fascinating to watch. I think St. Louis gives San Jose a hell of a fight in the conference final. I don't know that Dallas really has... the ability to do that, especially, if Ben Bishop is healthy, then Dallas is as good as anybody else in the league.
I agree.
But I don't.
They got to get that secondary scoring, which they got against Nashville. So we'll see what happens.
Yeah, and they got to continue doing that. And that kid Hiskinen, the
young
defenseman,
defenseman.
he's going to be a fucking stud in this league. Unbelievable player. And people were comparing him to Bobby Orr already, not just because he's wearing number 4, but because he's not only big and strong and can play a great defensive game, but he can move the puck, he can skate, he can shoot. Like, this is a total package type of guy. That's probably going to be like an Erik Karlsson type if he can keep his act together and keep playing this way.
Now, I'm hoping it's Dallas and San Jose because I bet those two series. Dallas was getting plus 140 to win the series. I took San Jose minus 135 to start the series. I also took a 15-1 prop on San Jose to sweep the Avalanche. So that's still intact right now.
There we go.
It's only $5, but hey, $75, to win 75.
Yeah, that's not bad.
But quick thing on the Jets here. Where do you go from here? You have 8 All-Stars on this team, and you could say Hellebuck's the main problem, but, I mean, Bufflin's getting old. Laine almost seems like he's becoming one-dimensional. Like, he's an Ovi-type player. I just don't think he's got the skill set. I don't think he's using the skill set like Ovi finally developed, being able to score from other places, being able to set up your own guys. Laine seems like his only mastery is that power play from the office shot. This isn't the guy you want to just then go throw $10 million to, it seems like to me.
You're right, and just as a quick little tangent, speaking of The Office, I did finally start watching The Office.
Good man.
Which I know that you have watched it probably 17 times at this point.
That would probably be right around accurate.
I'm just getting to like early season 3 right now, but the wife and I are doing a binge.
Speaking of Mr. Game of Thrones defender, they throw subtle digs at Game of Thrones in that series, so you'll catch them.
Oh, do they?
You'll catch them from time to time.
Yeah, because from where I'm at now, Game of Thrones hasn't started as a TV show yet, so I'm curious to see how that goes.
That's true, yeah.
Like, I know some of the subplots. Like, I know what happens to Jim and Pam. I know what happens to Michael Scott. Like, I know some of these things just through popular culture.
Yeah, I mean, at this point, Michael Scott did what he did 11 years ago.
Yeah, so, like, I know, this is like the Luke, I am your father of our time. Like, I know what happens even without seeing it.
It's the build-up now. Now you'll enjoy it, I think. It's very dry, it's very quick, and, like, undertone humor. It's not just in-your-face like comedy. But there's still some of that, too. So.
Yeah, no, I've definitely enjoyed it quite a bit so far. But anyway, getting back to Laine, no, I think you're absolutely right. He's Ovechkin without the smarts, which is probably the best way to say it. He doesn't have the adaptability. He doesn't see the whole ice like Ovechkin does. Even though Ovechkin doesn't play defense, Laine is probably a slightly better defensive player. It's you're comparing shit to shit. Like neither of these guys are like
worse.
Yeah, neither of these guys are ever going to be mistaken for a Selke candidate. So this is. I think you're absolutely right. He's definitely not worth $10 million. Will somebody give him $10 million?
Yes,
probably. Yeah,
I think the Jets will. Yeah.
Yeah, I think you're right. There may even be somebody else out there that if he does hit free agency, that they might throw a couple offers at him in that like 8 to 10 range.
Yeah.
So it'll be interesting to see what happens with him. But no, I think you're right. He's just too one-dimensional. They have outside of Bufflin,
Connors. Yeah. They have Tyler Myers, who's going to be a free agent this year. Up front, they got Scheifele and Wheeler, who are, in my opinion, their 2 best players.
Yeah, and those are the guys that they have to protect more than anybody, in my opinion. Whether or not they decide to do that with Laine as well, I don't know. I don't know.
Such a weird series. Every team, except for the last game, every team won on the road.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, it was a road series until Game 6, so... It just, I mean, the Winnipeg Jets are similar to the next team I'm talking about is the Nashville Predators, who have a lot of these guys who, obviously, you know the names, but they're not producing. I mean, and they're not performing up to what expectations are. I mean, Nashville, since making the Stanley Cup, has obviously regressed. I mean, they went to second round last year. And then they got bounced in the first round this year as an overwhelming favorite. I believe they were like 180 to start the series.
Oh, jeez.
160, 180, something like that. They were overwhelming favorite, picking up Boyle and Simmons, which they were not really effective. I know they were hurt for 2 games. At least one of them was hurt. Brian Boyle was out. And again, if you're relying on Brian Boyle to save your team, then you've got more major issues than just that. But goal scoring didn't happen. They were getting lucky even in the wins that they had. I can see Nashville being blown up. There's already rumors that Turris, PK, and Ellis, I think his name is, are all on the block for the offseason.
Wow.
So, again, that may be preliminary. That may just be someone speculating. But, I think PK's lost a step. Still one of the best, but I think he's lost a step.
No, I think you're right, and especially being paired with Roman Yossi. Yossi is such a better defenseman anyway that it's going to overshadow what PK can do defensively. PK is probably the better offensive weapon, but I think he is becoming more of a Brett Burns style where the defensive game for him is becoming less and less important. And he just wants to focus on assists and passes, that sort of part of his game. But I think you're right that he's definitively lost a step. I think a lot of people might even be willing to move on from Pekka Rinne.
I think there's no doubt. He signed an extension, so he'll be there.
He'll be there.
I think the time split may go to 60-40, 50-50, which actually may be better for the Nashville Predators. As far as I think UC Saros is definitely one of the up-and-coming guys to take a number one role.
For sure.
Either this year or either this coming year or very early next year.
And we saw how well goalie tandems can work in the NHL. This isn't like a closer by committee or a quarterback by committee, in other sports where this sort of thing doesn't work. In hockey, it can.
Dual quarterback system?
Yeah. In hockey, this can definitely work because we've seen the success that the Islanders had with Leonard and Greiss. We've seen it in Boston with Rask and Halak. We saw it in Calgary, even though Calgary didn't get very far. We saw that with Smith and Riddick, and especially with the Islanders winning the Jennings Trophy this year, and Leonard and Greiss splitting that award.
And Leonard's going to be a Vezina candidate, or is a Vezina candidate.
Yeah. So these are the kinds of things that you can look at and say, all right, we have the two goalies. If one of them is good enough where they're making too much money and a team's willing to trade for him, then
we can pick up some assets.
You pick up the assets, you dump the salary, you can move on, and you still have that guy that you have confidence in, and I think that's going to work out well for Nashville.
It worked out for Vegas, even though it was a drafting way, but everybody was kind of ready to throw Marc-Andre to the curb. And, for all intents and purposes, he's been amazing for the Knights. Better than anything you could have expected.
Oh, by a mile,
but there's a couple of openings that people believe that he being Pekka Rinne will be, that's Florida and Chicago. I believe he used to play for Chicago. I'd have to go back in the archives for that. But those are two spots that, definitely teams on the cusp. I don't know if Chicago can afford him unless he's willing to take a pay cut. But I definitely think Florida could be on the cusp if they can get somebody that's better than Reimer and Luongo.
Oh, I think you're right. Actually, and getting back to Fleury, there is one goalie still left in the playoffs that could have been a Vegas goalie. And
don't tell me. Hold on.
Let's see if you can get this. It's might be a little tricky just based on who he plays for.
I'm guessing Peter Mrazek.
No.
Okay. Grubauer could have been a Vegas goalie.
Yes, it was Grubauer. So what happened was on expansion draft night, the story goes, and I've heard this from too many people to think that it's just rumor, unless it's a rumor that's actually spread. But when McPhee was basically holding every other team hostage, he called Washington and said, "We're taking Nate Schmidt." And Washington said, "What can we do to make you not take Nate Schmidt?" And McPhee said, "I want Grubauer and Tom Wilson." And Washington said, "Have fun with Nate Schmidt." So Grubauer could have been a Golden Knight.
And they still lost him anyways. Didn't they trade him?
They
traded him for
was it a trade?
I thought they traded him to. He might have left. I don't know. But they ended up losing him anyways. But they still got a cup out of him. But you're right. He started the playoffs last year
and then got benched, and then came to Colorado and started the year on the bench. Stole the job from
Varlamov.
I was going to say Vasilevsky. I know that's not right. It's just I'm looking at a Vasilevsky jersey, which is why it put that thought in my head.
It's okay. I'm sure the Lightning at this point would have rather had Grubauer.
Yeah. So, but that's a very interesting thing, especially when you're looking at the goalies that are still left in the playoffs. I mean, you've got some names that people may recognize, and then you've got guys like Binnington, who nobody had heard of before. Even
Peter Mrazek, if you're not following hardcore, you wouldn't know who he is.
Right, exactly. Detroit's
like you said,
back up for a number of years.
Leonard and Greiss, people wouldn't really know that. Binnington, you're right.
But everybody knows Bishop. Everybody knows Goalie Bob.
Goalie Bob,
You,
Tuca.
you probably hear Martin Jones just based on people bitching about Martin Jones. The former Bruin, by the way, Martin Jones.
Yeah.
When the Bruins traded for him, people started saying trade Tuukka Rask because they thought Jones was the better pick. But
It's all environment.
relative,
he could
yeah.
have been. He could have been the better option, but you could speculate until your fucking brain falls out. But Dallas or Nashville coming back full circle. Pekka Rinne, I think some teams are going to pick up the phone in regards to that, and I wouldn't even be shocked if Winnipeg did it. I just don't. I mean, I know they threw a bunch of money at Hellbuck, but good God, it's just not working.
for me, if I'm San Jose, I'm probably calling too.
San Jose is another option too,
because Martin Jones.
not if you win the cup.
Well, not if you win the cup, but Martin Jones, a sub 900 save percentage is just unacceptable for a starting goalie
This year,
and
he's been the last 3 years. He's been pretty lights out.
well, yeah, but
yes,
I mean that's
it
the
could
problem.
be a telltale sign.
Yeah,
You're right. Yeah.
But the other problem is that he's got 5 more years at $5.75 million left on his contract. So Jones is
You got to find somebody to lift to take him.
Yeah, so
which could be Florida as well.
I mean, these are the kinds of things that you have to look at. So, and right now, Pekka Rinne is a better goalie than Martin Jones. Even though Martin Jones is still in the playoffs and Rinne isn't, I think
I agree.
San Jose has to pick up the phone.
I agree, and being a goalie also matters with your defense as well. I think Nashville's defensive unit, like you said, if they lose Erik Karlsson or San Jose loses Erik Karlsson, they could take a step down and. We'll see. I mean, like Pekka Rinne, it all depends. Like situations, definitely, especially in football, situations matter sometimes over your talent.
Yes.
But at the same time, another team that could be looking, who is still in the playoffs but might have some huge losses, is Columbus.
Yes.
I mean, goalie Bob's testing the market.
Oh, for sure.
If he wins this series, he probably puts himself at $8 or $9 million a year.
Yeah, especially with Korpisalo coming up behind him, I don't think there's any reason for Columbus to hold on to him. Actually,
but see, Korpisalo in his time has been, but he is the goalie in waiting. You're right.
But I think Tortorella has enough confidence in him that if they weren't confident in Korpisalo, that they would have made a move either this past offseason or at the trade deadline this year where they could have gotten the backup, either as the heir apparent or for somebody to take the place of goalie Bob if he were to get hurt during the playoff stretch. Because let's face it, the way that Columbus positioned themselves this year is if they hadn't made the playoffs, it would have been a disaster based on everything that they gave up.
Keeping everybody. Yeah. And they went gung-ho, too.
Yeah, so, I mean, going all in at the trade deadline and missing the playoffs is unacceptable. It may have cost the GM his job if that had been the case.
They had to play playoff hockey for about a month to get in, so
yeah, and now
that may have been their advantage against Tampa Bay.
And now not only are they in, but, I mean, God almighty, what a run.
Sweep. I mean, after the first 2 periods of Game 1, it was like Tampa Bay was like, see ya.
Yeah, this is everybody said Tampa in 3, and I think they thought they were going to be right because it just would have been that dominant a series. And the sick thing is, I had Columbus in Game 1, Game 3, and Game 4.
Yeah.
So I went 3 for 3 on those bets.
They just did. I mean, with Kucherov being out, Hedman being out.
Hedman being out was so massive.
Yeah.
I know Kucherov getting the suspension hurt, but the flip
they
side
still
is
have enough offense to get by with Point and Stamkos
and when
Gord.
Kucherov was in, he didn't do anything.
Also true.
He was invisible on
having him in as a decoy still helps. Having him in is better than having him out.
True. No, absolutely.
Regardless of what his performance was. But you're right. He was largely absent in the series, and maybe that was Columbus's plan, just to take him out and frustrate him so much that he checks a guy into the board, gets suspended.
Yeah,
but
that was not a smart play. That's like a Nazem Kadri type play.
Yeah, down 3-0, I made the comment on Twitter, and I got blasted for it. I said, I think they should put Domingue in, bench Vasilevsky.
Ooh.
I mean, I can speculate till the cows come home because Vasilevsky didn't win Game 4 either. But Domingue was pretty solid this year as a backup. I believe he's an unrestricted free agent this year. He might command some, not starting gigs, but he might command a reputable backup for any of these teams. Or I'd like to see the Tampa Bay keep him. But
like a tandem job like we're seeing in a few of these teams.
It's true, yeah. But yeah, Columbus has now moved on. They had an epic 2 overtime game last night.
Yep.
So they got Boston right where they want them. I mean, Boston, like you said, you're never in trouble until you lose a home game, and Boston lost a home game. What is it about the Bruins? I didn't watch the game last night, so I could be off base on this. I'm speaking just merely from the first series against Toronto. But what is it about Boston? what does Cassidy have to do? It seems like it takes a lot to get these guys motivated for games.
Yeah, it's tough. I don't know what's going on in Boston because first line's invisible. Like the Marchand, Bergeron,
Jake
Pastrnak
DeBrusk is
line.
coming along real good.
The second line's great. Krejci, DeBrusk, and Heinen. And actually, there was a time where Pastrnak was on the second line. Heinen
Game
was on
7
the
he
first.
was, I know that.
Yeah, so they've been kind of mixing and matching those. But, I mean, the best line's been the third line with Coyle,
Backes.
Johansson. Backes hasn't been playing.
Oh.
It's Coyle, Johansson, and number 20, Nordstrom. So the three of them have been a good chunk of the offense for this Bruins team. And they've been playing well. I don't know why they just seem to coast through periods, through like certain sections of the
Take
game.
shifts off.
Yeah, it's frustrating as hell. As a born and bred Bruins fan, watching this stuff, trying to figure out what they're doing, what the game plan is. I don't know if it's you might be right. I don't know if it's a motivation thing from the coach.
Because based on odds, they're the best team left.
Oh, by a mile. Well, maybe not. But I mean, this is Boston's Stanley Cup to lose right now, based on the way that these teams are all shaping up. Because based on the way the regular season shook out, for as good as Tampa Bay was, a lot of people forget that Boston was really fucking good this year
behind
too.
them, yeah.
As Boston and Calgary is 2 and 3 for pretty much the last 2 months of the season. So I mean, this is not the Boston team I'm used to watching. And I think it's going to take Marchand getting on the scoring train to really try to get them back into the fold and back into the where they need to be, because right now this is not acceptable, and this series could go 7 games, which it never should have. It never should have for Tampa and Columbus, but Columbus is putting up a hell of a fight, and this is a tough one for Boston.
Well, that's the thing. I mean, like you talked about, we got guys on Columbus that are definitely, I've already said, they're definitely going to test free agency at this point. So to go out there and just play, they have, I don't want to say they have nothing to lose, but I mean, they've won their cup, essentially dominating the all-record team, and now everything else, I feel like they're just kind of playing with house money at this point.
Yeah, and the whole thing that we have to look at, especially with the Boston-Columbus series, is that we just have to give Columbus credit.
Oh, I wasn't definitely not shutting them down. It just seems to me that Boston, just talent-wise, but I mean, let's throw talent out the window in hockey, and let's throw talent out the window, especially in this bracket. And it's only one game; it's 1-1, and this is what Boston did last series, and they lost the game at home, and they're not doing themselves any favors, I guess is what I'm saying. And the silver lining, I think, is with all that production coming from the third line, if the first and second, which, again, the second's had some decent production too, especially with DeBrusk, but if that first line ever does come around and start kind of having that run like Stone Stats and Patch did in the first 5 games of their series, look out.
Oh, yeah.
You're not stopping them.
Yeah, so, I mean, this is the kind of thing...
I think they're head and shoulders above whoever they have to face next round, both teams.
Yeah, and it's going to be interesting, assuming Boston can get past Columbus.
Also true.
So, but yeah, I think you're absolutely right. If that first line gets going again for Boston, if Rask stops giving up the stupid soft goals, then I think that Boston becomes unstoppable in this run.
All right, so not to toot my own horn, but I believe I was the only one of the 4 of us that had Carolina advancing in this spot. Or I think Tony bet them, so that's not fair to say. But I did say Carolina in 7. I got it on an ugly bump, but that's sometimes how double overtime games work.
Yeah, that's the beauty of double overtime game 7s.
We got. I'm sure a lot of people penciled in. They saw the number. They saw the teams. They know the players. I'm sure a lot of people penciled in Caps Penguins because that's just what we do in the second round here in the Metropolitan Division, and we've got the other 2 teams. And not only do we have the other 2 teams, Pittsburgh did not even win a game.
Yeah, Pittsburgh getting swept. It didn't surprise me that Pittsburgh lost because for me, they were so bad for a good stretch of the season. They kind of found themselves towards the end of the season, but I never thought that they really kept it together completely. Mm-hmm. And when you look at New York, the Islanders, not only as a defensive team, but that goalie tandem, God almighty, are they good. Between that, I knew Pittsburgh was going to have trouble scoring. I didn't think that Pittsburgh would get swept, but I definitely thought the Islanders were going to win.
Yeah,
I
also
bet
took
the
Islanders as well.
I bet the Islanders all 4 games. I didn't bet the series. Well, I did bet the series as part of a parlay, but I had Tampa Bay, so fuck you. But I definitively thought New York would win that series. But a sweep is just beyond anything I could have imagined, and they're playing great hockey. Obviously, Game 1 didn't go the Islanders' way, but I mean, credit to Mrazek in that one because a 1-0 overtime win, you can't put that on Leonard's shoulders for being a loser.
You got to be perfect, and that goal was beautiful off the back wall. I mean, if you're going and like the games like that, like the Justin Williams assists from the corner, catching Holtby off guard, those in overtime games, that's what happens.
Yeah,
that's just what happens. You get a moment of a lapse in judgment or a lapse in position, and that's all you need. That's all you need. It's when you go into overtime, all bets are off. I mean, home ice advantage doesn't really matter. You can throw everything out the window. It's literally puck luck at that point.
Yeah, and the refs aren't going to call many penalties, if any, in overtimes. Like it's going to take a lot. We're not talking like Marty McSorley on Donald Brashear type hit.
And that's a good thing because you want these outcomes to be determined by the teams.
Right.
And most of the teams can police themselves well enough to. I mean, if something's egregious like a trip, they're going to call it. But yeah, something a little ticky-tack, maybe like a 5-minute major penalty. They're not going to allow overtime games to be decided by the refs.
No, definitively not. And
I can tell you what, I saw a lot of cross-checks off the face-off that got no calls.
Yeah.
So
I mean, it happens all the time.
It happens every play.
And Marchessault brought it up in his post-game rant that it happens probably on half of all face-offs in the NHL. There's that
it's
exact
probably
type of hit.
It too, yeah. And they showed it, and I was surprised. NBC Sports or whoever carried Game 7 between Carolina and Washington, there was a face-off, and I believe Kuznetsov got thrown down like that, just like that. He didn't fall into a guy a la Stastny, and he also didn't have a full mask. But literally the same. They called it. They showed it, the same exact play, and they're like, "This is what happens on all the face-offs." And there just happened to be a call on that one, which is why everybody's such up in arms.
Yeah.
I mean, if he took a stick to the guy's face or anything like that, or I mean, we would be like, yeah, well, a fucking moron, trade this fucker. But, I mean, it's just like, how do you make that call? And especially a call you didn't see.
That's the worst part of it for me. But, the refs are getting their dues where they're done for the playoffs and probably going to see a rule change this offseason because of it where, 5-minute majors will be reviewable because we have it in college. Yeah. If there's a hit to the head and they're talking about trying to throw a player out, it has to be reviewed by the refs.
We have that in college football. We have that in college hockey. And especially when you can go back and review, and he was nowhere near the head.
Yeah.
If you wanted to give a 2-minute minor with the game misconduct, I wouldn't have been happy, but I would have been more accepting of that.
And, the flip side is people say, oh, you can't slow down the game. You can't slow. We're taking 10 minutes to determine whether or not a skate was a quarter inch over the blue line for an offside play.
I've had this problem. I've had this problem with all of the things. Like, if I'm there to watch a game, I'm there to watch a game that gets done correctly, whether that's football, baseball, basketball, or hockey. I'm not watching basketball, but my point is clear. You want to watch a game that they get the game right. If that takes 10 extra minutes, fine. Especially if I'm in the arena. As longer I'm in the arena, the more I feel like I'm getting value out of my ticket.
Oh, for sure. But, it's.
But I'm a guy who can sit there and watch a hockey game into 2, 3, 4 overtimes. I don't care what the fucking time it is. I sit down, I committed to this game. I'll catch you when the game's over.
Yeah, although I will say that having a double overtime game the night that Game of Thrones was on was a little rough. They got to be more considerate of the people and the fans that trying to go home to watch Game of Thrones.
Why didn't you get your press pass and go ask Marshy that question?
Yeah, and
hey, March, I got Game of Thrones going on. Why can't I just fucking put one in the back of the net?
So I will say this for Game 1 in Vegas. The game started at 7 p.m. local time. HBO on the East Coast shows Game of Thrones at 6 p.m. Pacific time. So, so there is the earlier broadcast, which we can and sometimes do watch. So before I think it was Game 3, where the first episode of the new season premiered, the wife and I actually had a very serious, long discussion as to whether or not we should sell the tickets and stay home and watch Game of Thrones.
Wow.
Or go to the game, DVR Game of Thrones, shut our phones off at 6 p.m. so nobody could try to spoil it for us, and then watch Game of Thrones when we got home, which is what we ended up doing, which is why, at 6 o'clock, my phone was shut off, and by the time we got home, took the dog out, and watched Game of Thrones, my phone didn't get turned on until after midnight.
I gotta say that when you sent that text about no communication, the three of us were all piss drunk because it was Masters Sunday.
Oh, that's right.
And we were in the pool all day just getting fucking blasted, and you're like, please do not communicate. Or if you have to communicate with me, please make sure it's in the next 10 minutes.
Yeah.
And we're like, what?
Yep, Game of Thrones, motherfucker.
That was great.
I did the same
I get
thing.
it, dude. I get it.
I did the same thing for Avengers Endgame. I made sure to avoid Reddit and a couple other sites.
Have you seen it yet?
I saw it Friday night at like a super late showing. And so now I'm immune from spoilers, so to speak. Have you seen it?
I have not, so don't
Okay.
spoil it.
Yeah.
I speaking of spoilers, there was a guy on one of the Vegas Facebook pages that might be one of the more epic troll jobs I've ever seen. So he went on all the Sharks Reddits, Facebook pages, I don't know, NHL page, whatever, and posted spoiler alerts for Endgame. He said this and this happened, this and that. Again, I don't know what happens yet.
Oh my god!
He said this and this happens, this and this happens, and apparently he got a lot of hateful feedback.
So I will say that based on what happens in Endgame, that's fucking mean. That's real.
I have
fucking
heard
mean.
one spoiler alert that got dumped to me, and it's just that Tony Stark dies.
Okay,
So that's the only thing I know.
that is some part of it, but.
Well, it's a 3-hour movie. I would hope it's some part.
Yeah, but I mean, the way it happens is pretty epic. There's a couple other things that are spoiler worthy, which if you haven't heard yet, still it's not like. Well, I guess we should probably.
Yeah, let's calm it down.
But-
We can bring up this conversation in 3 months. If you haven't seen it by then, you're not going to see it.
Yeah, but I mean, this is the kind of thing where by hearing the spoiler, you're not ruining the movie. You're not ruining all of the crazy shit that happens in the movie. So it's still definitively worth seeing.
Fair enough. I know we're going to go see it Tuesday when they got those $5 showings up at Santa Fe. So
Okay, do you already have the tickets for it?
no, we're just gonna try it, and then if not, we have the Fire Stick. We'll just see if we can get a good stream.
Then you should actually try to go online and buy tickets now, because as I was walking into the theater Friday night, I heard employees talking saying that they were sold out through Wednesday.
Oh, well, if they are, no big deal. I'll try again the next week and just hold your spoilers.
All right.
And don't go on any Sharks pages.
Yeah, no, that sounds pretty mean. That would be like texting random numbers in the San Jose area code and doing the same thing.
That's another good one. Taking out all fandoms, all betting angles, taking out all thought process on what I believe is going to happen. I subconsciously was kind of rooting for the Islanders and the Leafs to match up in the conference finals. That would have been nice to see the Islanders go to the Stanley Cup on Tavares.
So,
Again, if that moment presented itself. I wasn't rooting for that moment in betting and in fandom wise. But
yeah, no, I get that. And I was partially the way with you there. For this round, I actually wanted Washington to move on so that Barry Trotz could beat Washington and knock them out of the playoffs.
That's also another good one.
So
yeah.
that would have been another angle that I think would have been nice. But I mean, for me,
Also, just Barry Trotz getting farther than them is good too.
Yes,
But yes,
no,
I get what you're saying. Yeah.
But I mean, this is fantastic for me. But I think right now the way things are shaping up, I can see St. Louis and San Jose in the West. I can see Boston and the Islanders in the East. But given the way that these playoffs have gone, I'm probably going to go 0 for 4 in those predictions. So
No, you're not token Tony. You're going to win one.
So we'll see how it shakes out. But I mean, this is what makes playoff hockey so wonderful, is that you don't know what's going to happen. Teams can show up, teams can disappear, and this is why this is the best time of year.
Yeah, I mean, look at the goalies we're getting great production out of. Bennington, a rookie,
Yep.
who probably will win the Calder, even though it's a regular season award. If he keeps going, he'll probably win the Calder. You got Mrazek and Leonard, who have been journeymen, effectively. I mean, Mrazek spent so many years in Detroit just kind of yucking it up. I mean, he was Tampa Bay's biggest weapon as a Detroit goaltender for a long time. You have Grice and Leonard. Grice has been with the Islanders, but Leonard was with Buffalo last year, I think.
Yeah, I think you're right.
And like you said, Bobrovsky is the name you know. Bishop is the name you know. But if Bishop gets hurt, which he's prone to do, then that just gives the avenue for St. Louis to it gives the avenue for Seattle to draft him, but St. Louis to run. And I think between momentum and talent, I think the Sharks hold yourself. I think the Sharks are winning the cup.
Oh.
I know you don't agree with me.
Oh, no, I mean,
They're at least getting there. I think that
momentum, yes. I don't know.
I know you hate Martin Jones so much, but if he plays like he did in 6, and I wouldn't say 7, he played okay in 7. A couple of those shots were defensive liabilities. The Carlson goal just that was a great goal in Game 7.
Yeah.
The first Carlson goal. I just think that talent, especially with Vlasic coming back, they roll 3 really good lines. I mean, in my opinion, with the Kane line, even Thornton's line has been impressive this year. Not him specifically, but it's been impressive in the playoffs so far. So my final 4, I didn't do a second chance bracket, so I will go. I'm actually kind of with you here. I said the Islanders, Bruins, Blues, and Sharks.
Okay, yeah. So
I'm
we're
kind of with you with that. So I think it's Sharks, Bruins in the Stanley Cup, based on what I have here.
which, if that happens and Boston wins,
You gonna go out there?
which I'm hoping. I might go to try to see one of the games, but definitively what'll happen is whenever the Knights play San Jose, I'll wear my Boston gear for those games.
If the Bruins win.
Yeah, if the Bruins win. Yeah, only if the Bruins win. I don't need that shit if the Bruins lose.
Well, that was like the night of Game 7. I had to go to work, and it was you could wear your VGK gear. And my boss texted me. He goes, "What jersey are you wearing today to work after the game?" Because it was after the game.
Okay.
And I'm like, "Well, I'm not wearing shit if they don't win." Like, I'm not trying to be a fake fan, but like I just don't want to deal with the ribbings and stuff like that, and especially if I'd have won a jersey after they blew a fucking 3-0 lead.
Right, especially when you're at work and you can't tell somebody to go
Yeah,
fuck
I can't tell you to go fucking eat rocks and shit. Yeah, so I wore a suit, but yeah, I could see Boston, especially like I said, they're the best team. Vegas believes they're the best team left in the playoffs, but I just feel like momentum and a storyline. Joe Thornton. Best player, a lot of people believe, to not win a cup at this point, and I mean, I wouldn't say he's got the easiest road back, but I mean, like I said, I think they can handle Colorado pretty easily, and God forbid if Dallas gets in, I think they're a far better team than Dallas.
Yeah.
St. Louis gives them more of a shot with a lot of offensive speed and a pretty good goalie playing right now. But again, anything can go with Bishop. If he's on and he's healthy, he's, in my opinion, maybe the best goalie left in the playoffs right now. So.
All right, I can see that.
So, last thing we want to touch about, I just want to talk about this because we talked about it in the Vegas San Jose series. But as these playoffs continue, and if San Jose does keep advancing and Erik Karlsson keeps looking mildly mediocre, how much money is he costing himself? Because a lot of people believed he was going to get 10 or 11 million next year, and now I'm thinking he may even just get 5 or 6 like he's making now.
Yeah, I think 5 or 6 is probably the right number, and from what I've heard, and I heard this by kind of reading through Sharks pages, is that Sharks fans think he's gone, no matter what. His wife misses Canada. He doesn't seem to be happy in San Jose. So it may even be that he takes not the best offer, but a good offer that gives him the best quality of life.
To go back to Canada? Or
So
just in general?
Just in general. So I think like...
Best quality of life. Go to Florida. Make $8 million and live on the beach.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's a possibility. I think if New York comes calling, either of the New York teams come calling, then he's got a chance of going there. I think anything in Canada is probably worth looking at. You know, the big city, and this is the same problem that Columbus is going to face with Panarin, is that, you know...
He's gone.
He's definitively gone, but he's a young kid. And he's not gone because he doesn't like Columbus, or he doesn't like the team. It has nothing to do with the culture or anything else.
Columbus.
It's fucking Columbus. Like, what is there to do aside from going to Ohio State games? And I say this. I
like Columbus.
A very good friend of mine lives in Columbus, and he's like, "Oh yeah, Panarin's definitely fucking gone."
But that's the thing; it's going to matter where he signs. Because if he leaves Columbus because I'm bored, and then goes to Detroit, it's like, well, that didn't do anything. That didn't solve anything.
But again, you know, these are the Chicago's, Los Angeles, New York.
He could go back to Chicago.
Yeah, any of those teams come calling. I think he's definitely going to sign there.
I can see him with the Rangers. That's where I can see. I can just, if you look for a quick, That's So Raven view.
All right.
Did I make a weird...
Yeah.
You're older than me, so you might not remember that. I watched that as a kid. You remember that show?
I remember it being on. I never watched it.
Yeah. Well, she would have, she was clairvoyant, so she could see into the future. But anyways,
God.
we don't want to go into that anymore.
I thought it was just like a stupid kid show. I didn't realize that there was a stupid twist to a stupid kid show.
Exactly, that's what it is. I mean, you look at it now and you're like, why did I ever watch that? But the sidekick was hot.
Ah, there we go.
Anyways, so yeah, I can see him in the Blues, in the blue shirt in New York. I just don't know if a lot of other teams. He could go to L.A., I guess. I mean, L.A. is going to have not a lot of cap space. I think this guy's going to command 9 minimum.
Yeah, for sure. Let me see. I'm not entirely sure what the Kings have for cap space here.
I mean, they got to be able to dump Kovalchuk, which I don't think they can. Nobody's going to take that $6.5 million salary.
And yeah, you're right. Oof. Yeah, Kopitar signed for 10 a year through 2024.
And Quick
is 5.8 through 2023.
Oh, I thought he made more than that, but still a lot of money.
And they don't have a lot of money coming off the books. So yeah, probably Los Angeles. They have a handful of restricted free agents, but they're all making under $1 million.
Yeah.
And no UFAs coming off this year. Wow, that sucks for LA because not only were they bad, but they're not freeing up any cap space.
They're not getting good anytime soon.
Yeah.
Unless it's with that team. And you're right, there's not a lot of wiggle room there. So branching off the playoffs, looking at the offseason with the Golden Knights, you're talking about RFAs, you're talking about guys. They've got some interesting things to do this year in the offseason because now you've got one of your prizes, I guess you could say, William Karlsson. Obviously, his goal production took a huge dip. Thanks for that prop bet, by the way.
Yeah, that didn't go well for me.
But if I understand the RFA system correctly, he has to be offered at least what he made last year in terms of a long-term contract.
Yes.
So that means $5.25 million, which ironically is also the exact number that can come off as far as long-term injury reserve regarding David Clarkson. They can finally move his number to LTIR, and they will basically get that in relief. So I feel like that effectively will free up the ability for Karlsson because they can sign him to 4 years, $21 million or something like that, and basically keep him at the same. I think for a 20 to 24 goal scorer. I think that's a fair contract.
I think you're right, and Vegas doesn't have a ton of money coming off the books this year. They'll have.
I mean, their UFAs don't make much, and their RFAs, a lot of them, thankfully, don't make much. The question is, what are you going to sign Nikita Gusev to?
Yeah,
and there's a lot of people who believe that he may never even suit up for this team.
Yeah, I've heard that too, and I heard that it was kind of a waste for McPhee to call him up and burn that 1-year eligibility for him. But it'll be interesting to see because his number this year is 925. Yeah,
he's going to want more than that to come all across the states
for sure. So, but the flip side is they got to find a place for him because.
Well, the thing that scares me is now Alex Tuck bumps from 925 all the way to 4.75, and that's a lot for a third line guy.
Yeah, and
I know they're going to try to push him in, but he's just. In the beginning of the year, he was the catalyst as far as points, but he fucking disappears. He disappears huge for long stretches of time. And Pacioretty's going up to 7. Mark Stone's going up to 9.5. I mean, that's where all of your money's disappearing to, which is fine. The core will be intact. The question is of the guys who are UFAs, we got Bellemare, we got Pirri, we got Carpenter, and we got Engelland. I personally think they're all gone.
Yeah, oh yeah. No, I think you're right, especially Carpenter and Pirri. I think
Pirri's going to get a mill or two from a team.
Yeah, Pirri was in for just a handful of games for Vegas in the playoffs. Carpenter didn't see the ice in the playoffs.
Man, Pirri was the ultimate, I don't want to say con artist, but it's the only thing I can think of right now. Those 10 games where they had to decide, fucking guy was lights out. And then finally they're like, okay, we have to keep you on the roster. And he's like, all right, cool, I'm done.
Yep. Yeah, pretty much. That's been a problem. So.
Yeah, I think England's gone. I think he's in the front office. He'll be the what I call the Dave Andreychuk role. He's the director of player and community relations. That'll be him. That'll be him.
And so this is what, I shouldn't say scares me, but this is what concerns me a little bit is, cap space is tight, especially with some of these other contracts kicking into the bigger numbers coming up next year. They have realistically 6 centers between Stastny, Karlsson, Eakin, Haula. Bellemare's probably gone, so that takes care of that.
And then potentially Cody Glass, which I don't think he'll be up, but I mean, you can't hold the guy up forever.
Right, but and this is why I think, and I may be wrong about this, and I kind of hope I am wrong about this, but I think Carlson's number is going to be too high, and I think even as an RFA, he walks.
Well, the only way he walks is if somebody offers him.
Yeah,
which I don't know what the compensation is for that area. I think it's a first and a third. That might be a lot of assets to give up for a guy who he may regress to a 9-goal scorer again.
Yeah, but I mean,
this is a really good situation for him. The question would be is if you can get him at the 5.25 but restructure the rest of his average annual value to be maybe in the 3 or 4 range. The question is if I'm George McPhee at this point, I have to maybe sit down and take Alex Tuch to lunch and ask him to maybe reconsider that contract. He's not gonna.
Oh no, he's definitively
not gonna. But I might have to sit there and ask him.
Yeah, because that's just unacceptable, especially for somebody that's, like you said, on the third line. Because the first line, let's face it, is a Stastny line at this point.
Sure, yeah.
The second line with Carlson, Smith, and Marchessault, that's
$5 million is a reasonable price for both of those guys.
Right, and I think that's a reasonable, you're set, and that second line is fine. I think between Haula and Eakin, I'd rather keep Eakin, but I think there's too much.
You have made a 180 on that guy.
Yeah, I really have. I just, the way that he's played this year coming down the stretch, he is quick, he's defensive, he can take face-offs, this is a player, actually, and I even said if he's on the roster next year, I'm buying an Eakin jersey.
Nice.
I think that he's too strong to give up. I would rather see them try to give up Haula, and Haula's number is actually a little bit lower than.
I like if theoretically you could keep all of them. I mean, Eakin, you almost could use Game 7 as a situation to force him to the fourth line. It's not really a punishment, but he may think that it is and maybe play harder. Because you imagine rolling those 4 centers. You got Carlson, you got Stastny, you got Eakin, you got Haula rolling 4 lines of centers like that. I also believe, and I haven't thought about this lately because I thought there's no way they can get rid of him for what he means to the fan base, but I think they might move Ryan Reeves. Because Carrier does the same thing for a lot less money.
Yeah, and that's definitively true. Reeves is just such a niche player, and there are so few teams that.
Well, when he was scoring his first 8 goals for the half of the year, I was thinking, okay, well, maybe he might turn a page here. I mean, obviously he's 32. You don't really change your stripes at that. But, I mean, God, the guy got 8 goals in the first 3 months of the season.
No, that's great, but.
It didn't really materialize from there. He finished with 8 goals.
Yeah.
I think he finished with 9. But
and it's tough, especially because
it's a lot of money for I don't want to use the word, but a goon, an enforcer.
Yeah, but I mean, again, this is another guy that disappeared in the playoffs. Another guy that really had no offensive production. You're absolutely right that Carrier does essentially the same job. I think Carrier is a little less willing to drop the gloves.
And if you can't get the team to bait you, you almost are legitimately a ghost.
Yeah. Like
he got Kane in that, what was that, Game 3?
3 or 4, yeah. I mean, it was in Vegas.
But once they realized, they're like, we can't let this guy fuck with us. And they just ignored him, and he was gone.
Yeah. But, you're absolutely right, because Cody Eakin's making about a third of the money, maybe even a fourth of the money. And Carrier.
I was going to say, Eakin's making more, but I get what you're saying.
And Carrier's 8 years younger. So he doesn't have that
and he
wear and
actually taps in a little offense. He does get hurt a little bit, but I think you can find somebody. Now, let's look at the AHL a little bit on guys you may think who could come up. I keep thinking, and now he's RFA right now. I don't know if they'll resign him. I keep thinking that Tomas Hyka keeps getting a bad rap. I feel like when he's up here, he's fast, he's quick. Same with Tomas Tatar. It was they didn't really fit, but at the same time, I feel like if you need a cheap guy, he might be able to kind of play the fourth line and bridge the gap.
Yeah, well, that's the thing. It probably have to be the third line because that fourth line grinding type line, if it's...
So then we go Eakin,
Carrier, and then...
Nosek?
I was going to say they probably re-sign Nosek or they bring up somebody...
that Keegan Colasar guy is a big fucking dude.
Yeah. Or even Zukov, if they keep him, because he's still on the roster.
He's still on for one more year before an RFA. Yeah.
So, and then the third line would probably be Haula, Tuch, and then
Gusev,
Hyka,
if they can get him.
Gusev, or Glass, one of those 3.
You think Glass will be in the NHL next year?
I
can't imagine he'll start in the NHL unless he just blows it away.
Right,
and then he's got to play wing. I mean, that's going to be tough unless you move Holla back out to the wing.
Right, and that's sort of the flip side. Is Holla has said that he wants to be a center, and he feels that he's good enough to be a second line center. So
he might be. They may let Carlson walk and move him up.
And that's the other side of it is that if they do that, then they can justify keeping Eakin on as a third line center. They can go out and find a fourth line center pretty much anywhere.
Or maybe Bellemare will take a cut.
Yeah, Bellemare comes back for.
As crazy as it seems, he only makes 1.4, but I mean, he may need to go into the $925,000 range.
So I mean,
or I don't know what's the league minimum. I don't know what a league minimum is. Another guy I think that again, Derek England I think will walk. Jimmy Schultz or Nicholas Hague, are they going to be factors in here? White Cloud, remember everybody was raving about White Cloud a while. Jake Bischoff actually played in the majors for a little bit, on the big club for a little bit.
Yeah,
I mean he made the team. I don't know if it was due to Colin Miller's injury to start, but he made the team out of all of these guys. And Jimmy Schultz probably signed that ELC and sit in AHL for at least a year, but there's a lot of young. I mean, I know we talked about this when they traded Brandstrom. I think they got a lot of depth.
Yeah, no, I think you're right, and I think defense is probably where they're solid. I think they try to move one of Holden or Merrill, probably Holden just because the number's a little bit bigger.
And Merrill played pretty decently down the stretch last year. If he can capitalize on that, and Nick Holden's 31 years old.
Yeah, and Holden. Healthy scratch for Vegas this year in the playoffs. Healthy scratch for the Bruins last year in the playoffs. If a team is just looking to get depth defensemen, yeah, I mean he's a fine choice. $2.2 million
at a reasonable salary.
Yeah, so this is the kind of thing where you can hold on to him for a little bit and kind of balance. But I think you're right between Schultz, between Hague. Bischoff, White Cloud, Bischoff, they
one or two of them is going to be on this team.
They can put together a pretty decent defensive front.
Yeah, I mean John Merrill may have played well enough and at a cap number enough that both of those guys could be flipped. John Merrill could pick up a third, maybe a second for a team that doesn't plan on picking early in the second, or a nice young like a nice young guy that can just sit in the AHL and replace these guys. I think that's what they did with what's his face. Zach Leslie, who will probably be walking. And they traded him. Well, Kings traded him for cap because they had to get their cap relieved a little bit. So he didn't do anything for us, but he will. They could get another guy who may fill out the AHL roster. Is what I mean with Merrill. Maybe a pick and a minor guy. You never know. Because again, 2.2 is not bad. John Merrill at 1.375, another low number for a guy who probably could be your sixth guy. He played for the Devils pretty much before he came here. He was actually a sixth guy on the Devils, so it's not like he doesn't have experience other than the Knights at this point. So.
Yeah, but I mean, between Schmidt, McNabb, Miller, Theodore, those four are definitely on.
Yeah, I mean, they're all making pretty good money. I mean, McNabb's the cheapest one of all of them at that point. So if you keep the top four intact, which I imagine they will. England walks. If you could flip Merrill and Holden, I say at this point you're in a good spot with your top four pairing or top two pairings that you could bring two guys up and either run them together and let them develop, or you could run them side by side with some of these guys.
Yeah, you're probably gonna have to run them side by side, and we've seen that in Boston with Charlie McAvoy being paired with Chara. So and Grzelcyk being paired with it was Seidenberg for a while till he was out, and then.
But that's the question. I mean, you have Shea and Colin who are more offensive minded guys. The guy you pair them with will probably have to be defensive minded, which. Natural progression would be McNabb and Schmidt because they're more defensive-minded guys. I will say this, by the way. I don't know if you agree with me. I'll just little tangent.
Right.
Nate Schmidt had a terrible playoff series.
Yes. Yeah. Well, he did, and part of that was no offensive production. Part of that was
I'm okay without the offensive production. I just thought he got scared with the puck. And
yeah, I think you're right. But I think part of it is, and I don't think this can be understated. Is I think being paired with Engelland hurt Schmidt because he felt that he had to make up for the mistakes that Engelland was making, and Engelland makes a lot of fucking mistakes.
Yeah, I think speaking of going to lunch, like that's Alex Tuck, I think he's going to have to go to lunch with Derek Engelland and say, The only contract I got for you is director of player and director of player relations and community relations.
Yeah, exactly.
That's all you got here in Vegas, and I think he'd accept that. He gets it.
Yeah, at 37 years old, he's not making a ton of money playing.
He may try to go, but I can't imagine.
I think there's probably a team out there that'll offer him the same money that he made this year, $1.5 million. I think there's probably
scratch defenseman.
Yeah, there's a couple of teams out there that are looking for a depth guy, a guy that he can still play physical, he can still drop the gloves when he needs to. But I mean, this is a guy like if I'm Gallant, I am taking the stick out of Engelin's hands and saying your job is between the defensive goal line and center ice. You are not to go beyond center ice because. And this is why part of the reason that I thought Colorado would beat the shit out of Vegas if they went into this round of the playoffs is that Colorado would put McKinnon and
Rantanen and
Landeskog, yeah, all those guys just like even with or a step behind Engelin never catches them. Never in a million years. And, it's just going to be 2-on-0 breakaways for Colorado all series, and Fleury's just going to get burned.
But, yeah, regarding cap number, that's the thing that worries me is if Nate Schmidt's going to continue to play like that. And maybe, like I said, maybe it was having to overcompensate for England, but $6 million defensemen don't play the way he did in that series.
And we saw how well he's capable of playing when he was paired with McNabb during last year's playoffs. So we know that the ability's there. I think it's just a matter of getting the headspace correct, and I think this is the kind of thing where Schmidt has to, be paired with somebody that is either more in line with the way he thinks or somebody that he can communicate with a little bit better.
That is true. Yeah, we'll see how that goes because, like I said, I think this is the perfect time to flip Merrill and Holden if you can get anything for them. A pick would be great. Picking a player would be even better. But if you can get anything for those guys, you take your top four going in and you take your two best guys that come out of camp or come out of preseason, whether it be Schultz, Whitecloud, Bischoff, or Haig. My guess it would be Haig and Whitecloud, but I don't know. I haven't seen anything of Schultz, and Bischoff may get there because he's older. I don't know. It all depends. But he is an RFA, so we'll see if he's able to be re-signed this year. Both the other two guys, Whitecloud and Haig, are under contract, and my guess is that you're gonna re-sign a 20-year-old Jimmy Schultz, 22-year-old Jimmy Schultz, 23-year-old, over a 24-year-old Bischoff.
Probably.
But you never know.
I mean, there's only a year difference, so...
Legacy walks,
not huge.
I assume.
Legacy, yeah, probably.
Unrestricted free agent. The other two guys that would be in the system are Dansk and Ferguson. Both are under contract next year. That brings me to Malcolm Subban. You and I have different opinions on this. It's not necessarily because of his talent. You just believe that somebody else is willing to offer him, which I don't disagree with you, but I believe that Gerard Gallant and the rest of that staff really like Subban. So if somebody offers him $825, I think they may try very, very hard to match that.
And you're probably right, and I think for a number that's that low.
But at the same time, I think Dansk got to come up at some time. So I'm really caught between a rock and a hard place. I think just of what little I've seen of Dansk, I like, and always the backup to the backup goalie is the most popular player in the organization, right?
Yeah, and
Marc-Andre is not going anywhere. He's going up to $7 million. So you may have to offer Subban $925 when Oscar Dansk has one more year at $675, and effectively, like you said, you could groom him. Get him re-signed because he'll be an RFA in 2021, and Fleury will only have 2 years left on his deal at that point. So theoretically, an Oscar Dansk, correct me if I'm wrong, he's actually the same age as Malcolm Subban. So I think it's shit or get off the pot time for one of these two guys in the organization.
Yeah, and I think it's going to depend on the team's really going to have to look at how these guys have played. Subban has flashes of brilliance, still hasn't given up a shootout goal in his career.
Well, I think he needs the time. I think that Gallant and Pryor and the rest of that goaltending staff have to get the timeshare back to a normal rate. Yeah. That was just ridiculous this year.
No, and you're right about that. And I think the flip side is, Dansk, when he was here in Vegas, when nobody expected him to be here in Vegas, played well. He has the first shutout in Golden Knights history. And he put out, I think he was
first overtime win too.
I think he was either 3-0, 4-0, playing very, very well before he got hurt and then lost the job.
We went through the whole thing. We went through the whole 5 goalie process. Yeah.
So, it was a difficult time, but, being thrown into the fire and playing that well was great. I think the problem with Malcolm Subban is always going to be mental. If Malcolm Subban gives up 2 goals in the first period, he may as well give up 8 because he just mentally cannot recover from those kinds of mistakes. And I don't know what the issue is. I don't know if it's fixable. I assume it is for a professional, you would hope.
I think it's with time, too. I think it's just coming in these little spurts, these one-game spurts against teams you're not expected to win. He's already put behind the 8 ball.
Yeah, no, you're right about that.
He was 3-0. You're right. 3-0 in 4 games played.
Yeah, and
Oscar Dansk.
That was
second-round goalie, too. But Malcolm's a first-round goalie, so...
And I think part of the problem with Subban, too, is not only is he being put in situations where he's not expected to win, so he's already put behind the 8 ball, but I mean, if that is the way that Gallant is going to run his goalies, Subban is never going to succeed. And if that's the case, if I'm Subban, I'm hoping for an offer to get out of town.
Also fair. Yeah, you're right. I mean, the backup goalie is usually good for about 20 games. I don't know how many he played this year that weren't due to injury. You know?
Oh, yeah.
Because he was put in there, he played 9 games in a row. Not even fucking starting goalies play 9 games in a row.
Yeah, you're right about that. Let me see. He played
21. He started 20, but again, like the 9 in a row was due to injury.
Yeah, still had a better save percentage than Martin Jones.
Yeah, that GAA is a little high, but again, I think that GAA is a little high because he had a lot of saves, but he also had a few games where, like, I know they played Edmonton, they won like 6-3. He gave up 3 goals on like 15 shots.
Yeah.
So it's kind of tough to do. But I mean, like you said, they were drafted in the same draft, 2012. Subban was number 24, and Dansk was the first pick of the second round. So what is that? At the time, there were only 30 teams, so that's like 7 picks away.
Right. So there shouldn't be that big of a difference between these two. If you're looking at them as a whole, I have liked more of Dansk than what I've seen out of Subban, but I think Subban in flashes has played better than Dansk, if that makes sense. So
I agree 100%.
I don't envy the front office having to make this decision and having to make those distinctions.
Well, because we know what we're doing. We know till 2022, 29 is the guy.
Yeah.
So the question is okay, well, what do you re-sign Malcolm Subban at? Do you sign him to a 1-year deal and keep him and let Dansk continue developing, or do you think you can get him for 3 or 4 more years? The thing is unless Marc-Andre goes down with a significant injury, either one of these goalies isn't going to be starting until 29 years old. 29. Yeah, 26, 27, 28, 29 years old. And that's if Marc-Andre Fleury at 35, 6, 7 doesn't re-sign, which, knowing this franchise, they may do it.
Yeah,
just because of his fan favoriteness.
Yeah, and it's tough with goalies because you expect them to develop late and retire early. So the guys that have super long careers, like the Belfours and Patrick Roys of the world, those are anomalies.
Right.
So for Fleury to have been playing this well for, when did he get drafted? 04 or 05? I think he had 1 year, and then there was a strike year.
He was before 03. Yeah, let's see. Draft year 03, 1-1.
Yeah. So he played 03-04, lost the 04-05 season, came back for 05. But I think Fleury, I think if Fleury is still playing well at 37, they might go year to year, or maybe give him 2-year deals and just kind of see what he does. And I think that maybe selfishly by Gallant and McPhee and all them, in an attempt to steal Fleury away from the Penguins when it comes to Hockey Hall of Fame consideration. To see if Fleury... I'm still not convinced that he's a Hall of Famer at this point, which is probably another conversation for another day. But...
Wow.
Yeah.
Okay. I mean, I don't have the stats or details in front of me to make that
so
argument.
I will very quickly, I will just say I compared him to Waugh, Belfour, Osgood, and a handful of other guys.
Grant Fuhr.
Grant Fuhr. No, not Grant. I left Grant Fuhr out. Did I leave? I don't know.
I started talking about longevity.
Anyway, so I actually did a spreadsheet, and what I found was his wins, his win percentage, save percentage, goals against average, all of those numbers are similar. He didn't win the Calder. He's never won the Vezina. He's actually never finished better than 7th in Vezina voting. he has never won a Jennings. He's never won a Conn Smythe. So for all of these other guys that have gotten into the Hockey Hall of Fame, like Belfour, I think has 3 Jennings and a Conn Smythe. Waugh had like 4 or 5 Jennings, a couple of Conn Smythes. He won the Calder. So like all of these other, and the Vezinas are huge. All of these other individual accolades for goalies. It's hard enough for goalies to get into the Hockey Hall of Fame.
I was just looking at that. Actually, I think you might be in a smart spot because I think did Brodeur already get in?
Brodeur's in, yeah.
Okay, so you have Brodeur. Of our generation, you go back a little bit more than me, so you might know some of these guys. But of the generation that I can look at this and say, oh, I know who that is, you have Hasek,
Yeah.
Belfour, Patrick Roy, Grant Fuhr, and that's it. I mean, I know some of the other guys, but they're not in the era that I watched hockey. That's it.
Yeah.
That's it. I mean, like you said, you're going to have Brodeur. Brodeur is going to be on this list as well. But another guy, I mean, guys that I recognize, Vachon, Tony Esposito, Gary Cheevers. But other than that, like you said, yeah, guys it's hard to get in as a goalie.
Yeah, it is hard to get in. And I think the flip side of that is if Fleury wins the Stanley Cup with Vegas, he gets in.
Okay, so that's 4 cups.
Yeah, I think because that'll be 4 cups.
2 cups for him.
Yeah, and
Call
2,
it what it is.
2 is a backup, but
Although that one year he was
I was going to say he won probably 9 games
9
in the
out of the
playoffs.
16.
Yeah,
Yeah.
so that's like really 1.5.
2.5 cups if he wins. If he wins a cup in Vegas. Yeah.
Yeah, so I mean these are the kinds of things that you look at, but it's difficult. So the point I'm getting to is if he is a Hall of Fame candidate, if McPhee thinks that he's a Hall of Fame candidate, by trying to sign him, for a couple more years after his current contract expires, that may just be a way for McPhee to try to get a Vegas player in the Hockey Hall of Fame as opposed to Fleury going in as a Penguin.
He may do it, yeah, especially if he gets a cup. Kevin Weeks believes Curtis Joseph, Mike Vernon, and Chris Osgood will be the next 3 to get in.
Yeah, and that's that's the flip side. Is it's so hard for goalies to get into the Hockey Hall of Fame, and I don't know why.
Yeah, I mean, Osgood, 401 wins, 3 Stanley Cups.
Yeah.
Yeah, so you just never quite know how that's all going to work out. Especially, that's a hard position to get in for, you're sure. That is true.
Yeah, that's currently the biggest fight that my wife and I have ongoing right now.
Is Fleury going to be a Hall of Fame?
Is whether or not Fleury's going to be a Hall of Fame.
I would say if his career ended today, I would agree with you. Just looking at basic statistics, I would agree he's not.
She thinks he's definitively in no matter what. But
no disrespect to your wife, but I mean, how much does she actually know about the Hockey Hall of Fame? And again, I don't either. So, like I said, like when I told you, I was like, when you said that, I'm like, oh, but you're right. It's hard to get in.
Yeah, and this is the argument that
once you throw that opinion on some Vegas Golden Knights message boards.
Yeah, no, that's a good way to get crucified. I've already been banned from a Vegas Golden Knight fan book page.
On Facebook or on Reddit?
Facebook.
Oh, I get some time out sometimes because I just like to just stir the pot.
Well, there was one that was, first of all, they call themselves the Las Vegas Golden Knights official fan page. I'm like, first of all, if you're the official fan page,
you're not
get
the Las Vegas.
Yeah, get the fucking name right. Second of all, they posted an article, a 2-year-old article about John Tortorella on the page, and I said, hey, if this is about Vegas, we don't need to go back and talk about Columbus's head coach.
2 years ago.
This was about Tortorella said if any of his players kneel during the national anthem, he's going to bench them for the game. Mm-hmm. And I was just like, I didn't make a political statement. I wasn't trying to agree or disagree with it.
This is a Vegas page.
I'm like, this is a Vegas page, and it's old. We should focus on Vegas, and I was banned.
That's the beauty of freedom of speech, as long as it agrees with the people who can moderate it.
Yeah, exactly. So it's just I don't try to listen to these kinds of things. And then I saw another fan page where somebody on Vegas was trying to say that the Golden Knights roster from last year when they made the Stanley Cup final run, it was the exact same roster of the Las Vegas Wranglers, and it was just they added a couple of guys, and that he thought that they just turned the Wranglers into the Golden Knights.
Yeah, didn't you say that guy was at like 7-Eleven?
Yeah, it was at 7-Eleven, but I mean, this is...
they stopped playing 11 years ago and then just rebooted themselves.
Yeah, it's just, I couldn't believe some of the shit. So that's I don't pay attention to most of that stuff.
I like watching it. I like watching it for those things. There's times where people are on there and they're like, hey, I'm new to hockey. I don't understand this. Can you please explain? And then I'm like, all right, well, here, I will give you what I know. And then there's people who would just come out like bold and boastful, and they're like, blah, 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 and you're like, that couldn't be more wrong. I think I'm interested in this Golden Knights offseason because I believe it's the first off season where it will be about keeping people more so than going to get people.
Yeah, no, I think you're right. This is going to be
Because I think the only person I really want them to keep is Carlson.
Yeah, I would love to see them keep Carlson, but I think they can make a very strong and justifiable case to let him walk.
Sure, I understand that. But like I said, if Malcolm walks, okay, I want him to stay. But again, Noshek I think is going to resign, so I'm not really too worried about that. Bellemare I think is going to walk. I'm okay with that. England, obviously, we're way okay with that.
Oh, yeah.
But
I think Nosek's super underrated by this team, too, or
I do.
At least by the fan base. Cause
I do too, but I feel like I can see why people would agree that he could probably walk and be okay.
Yeah, and
It's all about opportunity. You can't. A lot of people have high expectations for a fourth line guy.
Yeah, which is unfortunate, but he's fast as hell, and he does a lot of things, like a lot of the plays where he was getting the shit kicked out of him by San Jose, and he just kept getting back up and getting back out there and playing.
Well,
great
we know about
games.
the Thornton one. So.
Yeah. So, these are the kinds of guys that you need if you're going to put together a true fourth line grinder type line.
Yeah.
And
you want some kind of scoring. So, like I said,
to have a scorer and to have a speed guy on that line,
and an enforcer with
Carey.
Like I said, I think Reeves could get moved, and I don't think a lot of people are going to like that.
Yeah, no, I think you're right. My wife would be miserable.
Yeah, I know that my girlfriend definitely likes Reeves as well, but it's a business, and if Reeves is not being able to bait the team or be able to hit, he's effectively useless.
Yeah,
call it what it is. He's a nice guy. We want him to be branding himself in the community, but it's still a business. If you want to do that, then just retire and be forever loved by the Knights Nation.
Yeah,
No,
I think you're right, but I don't know. It'll be interesting because he's only got one more year left on that contract. So I'm sure a team would be willing to take a flyer on an enforcer, especially if they feel that they got
the cap space for 2.2. I think. It was.
Yeah, if they got bullied around in their division or if in their playoff series, whoever it may
Go
be.
send them up to Edmonton and protect McJesus.
Yeah, there you go. That's not a terrible idea. You could send them to. I was going to say Tampa Bay. Tampa. Who does Tampa Bay have that's willing to drop the gloves right now?
It used to be Ryan Callahan, but he can't ever stay on the fucking ice.
Yeah, so.
And then Chris Kunitz the year before, and then they haven't really had one before that. The only last guy I remember, and this is dating back 10 years ago. I don't know if you remember Andre Roy.
I don't.
Yeah, exactly.
Wow. All right.
But he was basically Ryan Reeves of the early 2000s.
Yeah, so I think there are a handful of teams that even if they have moved away from having this type of player in the past, the fighters, the goons, the enforcers, whatever you want to call them, they are going away in the NHL, but they're not gone.
Yeah.
And I think there are still teams, because they use a very physical style of play, like if you look at the Atlantic Division with the way Boston plays, that's a very physical team that can still score a ton. So you would need a guy like Ryan Reeves on your roster if you're going to see him 4 times a year that can come back and hit back and kind of play that style of game.
The thing is I think the style of enforcer that is morphing itself is, and I hate to say this, is Tom Wilson, a guy who can still give you 15 to 20 goals.
Oh yeah,
and still beat your head off.
Well, and that's the thing that drives me crazy about Tom Wilson is that he's such an emotional cripple that he doesn't realize that he's actually good at hockey.
He's actually a contributor to that team. Yeah.
And to be able to play top line type minutes is a rarity for an enforcer, and that should make him a special player. But instead, he plays like a cunt.
Moron.
So he's got
like a cunt.
So he needs to knock off the extracurriculars because he should be a fantastic player. Like he
is, and he probably, like you said, I don't know how old he is. I don't have the numbers in front of me, but eventually he'll probably mature a little bit. I'd say he's probably in his mid-20s.
Sounds right.
Pull it up. Let's see. Where's Washington at? There it is. I love this cap. I love capfriendly.com.
Best site ever.
All right. Tom Wilson is 25 years old.
25?
Signed through 2024.
Yeah, he's got to get his act together.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. He'll figure it out. Yeah. Ooh, the Washington Capitals are going to have a fun offseason, too.
What's Ovechkin making per year?
9.5.
Oof.
Evgeny is 7.8, Backstrom 6.7, Oshie 5.7, Tom 5.1. And then Lars Eller is the only other forward under contract. And they got to deal with Hagelin, Burakovsky, Connolly, Devontae Smith-Pelly, and Jacob Verana. Although Jacob Verana is an RFA and Burakovsky is an RFA as well.
Yeah, well, Smith-Pelly's gone. He was already essentially designated for assignment until Oshie went down, and then they called him back up, and he was ineffective.
Then they're due to lose Christian Juice and Brooks Orpik in this year. Oh, unless they can re-sign them, obviously. But their cap number is probably pretty close, too. Yeah, they... Well, no, actually, they're still about $11 million under. But, again, they have $11 million under to sign all those guys or figure out what they're going to do. So that's going to be tough because Hagelin is 30. I don't know how they really define him, but I think he's definitely a $3 or $4 million player. So that's going to eat it up.
I can see that.
I like Carl Hagelin. I like the way he plays. But that's up to them. That's not up to me. So, all right, let's transition here as we wrap up. We told you we'd talk about the NFL draft a little bit.
I forgot about this.
Just go over a couple of picks. I know it's the best time of the year with the NHL playoffs, especially with how, like you said, the one word chaos has been. So we'll talk about a couple picks here. Obviously, Arizona taking Kyler Murray and effectively trading Josh Rosen. I understand it's a new coaching regime. And I understand if that's the guy you want, Kyler Murray. But good God, to take the number 8, I think it was 8 or 9 pick in the draft last year and flip him for a second-round pick, it's just embarrassing.
Yeah, no, that's a problem, and that is the new head coach, Kingsbury.
Yeah.
That is him saying that he is determined to make this roster his own. He doesn't want to hang on to the players that he doesn't believe in that were taken by the
previous regime.
Yeah,
the Steve Wilkes regime.
Yeah,
the 1 year.
And by any means necessary. So if that means trading away Rosen for a second-round pick and even a late second-round pick, I think.
Yeah, because they traded him for a pick in this draft, and they made the pick like right there.
Yeah. So that's... that's... I don't know if it's embarrassing, but that's Kingsbury saying that he is putting it all on the line for Kyler Murray. So,
and that's the thing too, because the GM, everybody thought Steve Keim was going to be fired last year, and I would imagine he's on the hottest of seats in Arizona at this point, no pun intended. So I guess this is my guy, Cliff Kingsbury, and I am literally all in on whatever he does because it's make or break for me at this point.
Yeah, no, definitely, and it's going to be very curious to see how it works out. It's going to curious to see because let's face it, outside of Larry Fitzgerald, Arizona doesn't have a ton of offensive weapons.
Christian Kirk, been preaching that guy all last year.
All right, well.
And I don't know if Larry still hasn't decided yet. He's been kind of on the fence, but maybe with Kyler Murray, it may rejuvenate him a little bit.
Yeah, and I think Kingsbury is probably going to beg and plead and do what needs to be done to get Fitzgerald to sign for one more year.
David Johnson, if he can come back healthy.
Well,
I think they misused him last year.
Yeah, they definitely did.
Especially with a rookie quarterback, you're not using the guy you're paying like $5 million to.
So these are the kinds of things that Arizona has to worry about. Hopefully, because I like Arizona. I hope they do well. I hope they succeed. I don't see them making much noise, but I think they can be improved if Kyler Murray...
They're definitely going to sell tickets with this guy.
Yeah, and if, this is the kind of thing where Kyler Murray comes in, even if, let's say, first year is 4-12, maybe 5-11, that still has to be looked at as a success. I think this is the kind of thing where...
better than 3-13, for sure.
Yeah, and little incremental steps, I think that helps him out. If he looks or if he looks good while he's playing, then Kingsbury looks like a genius. If they go 2-14 and he's throwing up 20 picks and 4 touchdowns, then Kingsbury may only get the 1-year treatment like last year.
It's hard to really know what's going to be of Kyler Murray because the only real successful quarterbacks that have come out of college that size are Drew Brees and Russell Wilson, which obviously that's a great pedigree, but I mean, how many guys, and just off the bat, Johnny Manziel, guys like that who are just not successful in this league for one reason or another. I mean, the running quarterback, he may experience some success early just because of just being able to catch them, but it's time and time again, and it's a broken record, but once there's tape on you, that's when your career starts.
Yeah, and this league can adapt and they can figure out just about any quarterback, any system that you put out there. So it's going to be on Arizona to not only keep him mobile so that he doesn't lose that aspect of the game, but he has to learn how to throw. He has to learn how to throw accurately, and he has to be able to know how to throw over offensive linemen that are half a foot to a foot taller than he is.
And like I said, that Texas Tech Big 12 offense, it's already shown, with the exception of, you want to say Baker Mayfield has already been successful. Again, it's still too early, so let's take him out of the equation. Big 12 offense, Big 12 quarterbacks are not successful.
Yeah. Yeah, and it's going to be, I think, a rough run for him. I hope he's successful. I am especially curious as to how the Kyler Murray scenario compares to Daniel Jones, assuming Daniel Jones sees the field. Because Jones is...
Well, we know Kyler's got the job.
Yeah, Kyler's definitely got the job. I don't think Daniel Jones does unless there's an injury or unless Eli goes, 0-5 in his first few games.
Even then, I think Daniel's got 1 year. I think he's got 1 year minimum. They're talking about maybe sitting him 2.
Oh, wow, okay.
They've been discussing that. But, okay, so after Kyler, there's a run of defensive guys. Many people believed, and we'll get to him, we can just touch on him now before we go back to Daniel Jones. Many people believed Devin White and Josh Allen were the best defensive guys. They were both linebackers, but they're also edge rushers, so they could really do both. And they went 5-7, which, a lot of people are scratching their head at Cleveland Farrell. He was projected at the end of the first round. Quinnen Williams and Bosa, they said were can't miss. But, and again, it's not my pick to make, but when you tell me that Josh Allen and Devin White are the best, why are they going 5-7 in this string of defensive guys? Which works out, because if Devin White's the best, then the Bucs got him, which I'm okay with.
Yeah, and, the way that I look at it is that it seemed to me like this draft was so defensive heavy that even if you miss on a Devin White or a Josh Allen, that you're still getting quality guys with the Quinnen Williams. Maybe not Cleveland Farrell, because I heard the same thing going at the end of the first round. But and
that's what we were talking about early in the season, because we were talking about why is Oakland trying not to get the first pick? And I'm like, well, we talked about this. Any guy you pick is probably going to be solid. Nick Bosa, everybody believes, is can't miss because they think he's better than his brother.
Wow, that would be super impressive if that turns out to be the case.
Yeah.
You can understand why the Jets would want somebody on the defensive line because they still have to face Brady for another couple of years. Same thing with the Bills in Miami. Actually, all AFC East teams pick defensive linemen in the first round this year. So that,
except for the Patriots.
Yeah, well,
I know what you meant. The competitors. Yeah.
Yeah, the people that have to face the Patriots.
Well, Sony Michel, if he plays like he does, he might have a nice career too.
Yeah. So this is but it was such a defensive heavy draft that I understand going after if you feel that you need a defensive end as opposed to an actual edge rusher or instead of a linebacker, like if these are the guys that you feel fit your system better, then I don't know, it didn't bother me as much letting guys like White and Allen fall down to 5-7.
Well, that's the scary thing is like White and Allen were edge rushers. Again, they could play both. Again, if you want Nick Bosa, I don't disagree with that. But if Cleveland Farrell was that much of a head scratcher to anybody who apparently knows what they're talking about, you got to look at this Oakland Raiders pick. Where did this pick come from? Well, this is their pick, but they had 3 first-round picks, so they had the ability to take somebody that maybe there was a reach. But what position does this guy play? Defensive end.
Defensive end.
Who did they trade to get 2 first-round picks for last year? Khalil Mack. What position did he play?
Defensive end.
This guy will be forever linked to Khalil Mack.
Yes.
So that's a lot of pressure.
Yeah.
That's a lot of pressure for the number. And he's also the number 4 pick in the draft.
Yeah, he's got to live up to that.
Yeah. So, all right, let's talk Daniel Jones. First thought was...
That was my first thought.
First thought was a head scratcher. Second thought was still a head scratcher. Because I believe if you really like Daniel Jones, because I'm not completely sold on Dwayne Haskins either. He looked really good at Ohio State, but Big Ten quarterbacks kind of have the same history. Do you know the last Big Ten quarterback drafted in the first round that not named Dwayne Haskins?
Ooh, I do not.
Kerry Collins.
Oh, Jesus
Exactly.
Christ.
So it's been a while. I think that was like 1993. So... it hasn't gone well for them, Big 12 quarterback or Big 10 quarterbacks. So I'm okay with them not feeling the greatest on Dwayne Haskins. However, the Giants picked at 17 too.
Yeah, they also picked at 30.
Well, yeah, but I think
they traded up to get there. But this is a guy that
a guy that struggled at Duke. And again, I understand the talent levels between Ohio State and Duke. But if you're that good as the number 6 quarterback, because I'll take this back, throw a little UCF sprinkle on it. And I know that. If Tony Johnson were here, he'd roll his eyes. But Blake Bortles went number 3. And I even thought, I was like, he needs to come back. He's not ready, blah, 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 this. But, he went number 3. How do you argue? He's not going to go higher. So, that being said, Blake Bortles at a smaller school, even though Duke is in the ACC, Blake Bortles at a smaller school put up ridiculous numbers. Daniel Jones did not do that.
Yeah.
Daniel Jones completed 59% of his passes at Duke, got blown out by Wake Forest 2 years in a row, but he had a really good Senior Bowl. And he also went to the Manning Passing Academy.
That I didn't
So
realize.
many people believe basically that Peyton and Eli said, draft this guy.
Yeah, which...
And if you're Dave Gettleman and that comes out to be true, if I'm the Mara family, you're gone. If your only reason for picking this guy at all, much less number 6, is because Peyton and Eli said to. Now, don't get me wrong. Peyton probably has a lot of pull with a lot of things. You talk to Peyton Manning. I mean, look, we don't like Peyton Manning for whatever reason or another. But if he was to tell me, if I was a scout and he was to tell me he liked this guy, I would go look at the guy.
Oh, for sure.
I mean, it is what it is. But if that's the sole reason you didn't do your own due diligence, you got to go. And at number 6, again, like I said, I think he could have been there at 17. They traded back into the first round at 30, but they could have probably gotten him at 30. But Gettleman said he didn't want to take any chances. Well, I think he took more of a chance by taking him at 6.
I think you're right, because that puts a lot of pressure on the kid too, especially
Sure.
for somebody that didn't have.
And he's already in New York.
for to not have a great collegiate campaign and to play with such an insane, psychotic fan base as the New York Giants fans. I think you're not putting the kid in the best situation to start with. Now, you could overcome, you could surprise a lot of people.
Well, that year off could really be big.
Yeah, which is certainly a possibility. But I heard a lot of people say that this is the guy that the Patriots were going to target at number 32. If he was
I've heard that a
available.
lot too. Yeah.
So to
At
take him
32
at
with
6,
2 years of sitting, maybe 3 years of sitting might be a better option.
Yeah, to take him at 6, I think you're exactly right. I think picking him at 17 was probably the better way to go. And at that point, they could have gotten the Josh Allen or. Even if they wanted to grab...
And that's the thing. They could have grabbed a great edge rusher or a linebacker.
Or even Hawkinson, that number
good
8.
tight end. Could you pair him up with... what's his name? I had him on my fantasy team this year. He was really good when he wasn't hurt. Ugh. It'll come to me. Anyways, so... Yeah, you could have paired him up with Saquon, and because you've already lost Odell Beckham, you got Golden Tate running outside. It's driving me nuts. What the fuck is his name? Anyways,
Giants tight end.
Giants tight end.
I don't know. I didn't even realize they used tight ends.
He was a really good rookie last year. But yeah, you could have had Devin Bush. Ed Oliver would have been really good in that spot, and you could have still gotten
Evan Ingram.
Evan Ingram. That's the name of the tight end. Yeah, Evan Ingram. But I mean, the funny thing is, they went defensive tackle at 17.
Yeah.
So they could have gotten a potentially better defensive option at 6 and still probably got Jones at 17.
Yeah, I was following this on CBS Draft Tracker on my phone because the first round was happening the same time as Game 1 between Bruins and Blue Jackets.
Yeah.
And I after each pick, it was announced, and then CBS would give it a grade. Kyler Murray got like a C+ or something, but everything else was...
You either love that pick or you hate it.
Yeah,
I mean, you really do. There's no middle ground.
It was either A or A- until they got to the Giants, and they got a D.
It's tough.
Pick.
It's tough.
It's a tough pick to
because you could have
justify.
made you could have made Dwayne Haskins that same pick, and people would have liked, because people like Dwayne Haskins. They think that he's going to translate, and I'm not saying that he's not, and he really has a lot of the tools. But he's another one. I think he went to the perfect spot with the Redskins. He should sit and let Case Keenum play a year.
Yeah.
Which the question is though, will that get Jay Gruden fired?
No, probably.
But yeah, I mean, having that pick at 6 is just tough. I wish Token Tony was in town, because the only thing Token Tony said to me about the draft is, please don't take a tight end. And what do? They take a tight end.
Yep.
But this guy, again, Abron was very highly touted too. This guy's very highly touted. I mean, for a tight end to go number 8, I mean, that's pretty crazy. But again, would he have gone 8 if it wasn't the Lions picking? The Lions have so many more needs, in my opinion, than a fucking tight end at 8. But
you're right, but I think part of that may have even been Matt Patricia trying to keep this guy away from New England, because there were rumors that New England, with their with their 3 second-round picks, that New England was going to try to move up in the first round to grab a tight end.
I think they grabbed a tight end too, didn't they? If I'm not mistaken.
I don't know that they did, and I think that speaks volumes about Gronkowski coming back this year.
You really think that's going to happen? Eh?
Yes. Now, the
week 5.
Yeah, it'll probably be. They may even do
When's
it.
their bye week? That's the question.
They may even do it after the
first 8.
The preseason. He may be back by like week 1 or 2. Let's see. Wide receiver, corner, defense. No tight end.
No tight end. Okay.
No tight end.
So All right, we went through the top 10, basically. Ed Oliver and Devin Bush rounded out. Another 2 picks the Giants could have made that probably would have been more beneficial at that point. Then we go through like a little bit of a lull with guys who, I mean, a lot of guards. The Falcons took 2 guards. Or a guard in the center. Their mission is to protect Matt Ryan for as long as they can.
Yeah, taking another kid out of Boston College. Boston College, for as bad as they are at college football, have a better offensive line than probably half the teams in the NFL. Their offensive lines are year after year so fucking good. It is unbelievable.
Their defense used to be good for the last few years too.
Yeah, but I mean the offensive line, it's been consistent ever since the days of like Doug Flutie.
Yeah.
Boston College does amazing at the offensive line position, and it's just seeing those guys go into the draft is probably, if you're looking for an offensive lineman, that's where you need to draft from. So, more power to Atlanta for keeping Matt Ryan upright with a fellow BC Eagle.
And, one of the things, it got overlooked, not a lot of people talked about it, was because we saw a lot of these guys who were projected first-round picks slide into some of the second and third rounds. And what a lot of people were talking about is the way that the NFL draft slotting is for paying. A lot of these guys are not yet polished enough to make the money for first-round picks. They said like Drew Lock. Drew Lock was all projected to be a first-round pick, but Denver got him with the 10th pick in the second round. And the reason they do this, Greedy Williams was another one, a cornerback at LSU. A lot of people thought he'd be a first-round pick. A lot of people thought DK Metcalf. I don't know if you saw that guy that was like 1% body fat.
Oh, I heard about him a little bit, yeah.
Yeah, he was picked with the last pick in the second round, a pick that New England traded to Seattle. And a lot of people wondered why these guys fell. And one guy said the reason that they fall is because with the way that these salaries are slotted, these guys aren't worth reaching and paying a guy to be a bust. So if I can let him slide and pay him a little less, if he is a bust, it's not that big of a deal. Guy like Mecole Hardman was projected to be a end of the first round. The Kansas City Chiefs got him with the 24th pick in the second round, which he plays wide receiver at Georgia. He plays a similar style to a guy who might not be a Kansas City Chief next year, and that's Tyreek Hill.
Ah, okay.
So it's kind of an interesting bag of worms. This draft was the first one, and I didn't follow it like super hardcore, but this draft was the first one where I can see, it's funny how, we pay people and then the market kind of corrects itself, and then then the players believe they're undervalued, and then all of a sudden we pay them again. It's crazy to see how these things, how the NFL continuously recalibrates itself. I mean, remember it was like, you got to pay the quarterback. Oh, no, wait, you got to draft a really good quarterback now, and hopefully you win a Super Bowl in 5 years before you have to pay that quarterback. Now, it's crazy how the NFL just recalibrates itself every year.
Yeah, and it's interesting to watch just from like a capitalism perspective. You're right, the market corrections are interesting. And for me, it's interesting too. It's more of the sub-drama plots, like when Arizona drafted Kyler Murray, it's like, oh, Josh Rosen's gone.
Yeah.
When Washington drafted Dwayne Haskins, is that Alex Smith either?
Well, he's not playing this year for sure.
Well, is he too hurt to ever come back, or is this just
they just
they're moving on from
yeah.
him? So, these kinds of subplots for me are the most fascinating part. And then, everything comes back to the Patriots for me. And at number 32, Bill Belichick, for the first time as a Patriot,
drafted a receiver
in the first round.
And you know what? Last year, I think, they drafted Lawrence Maroney too. But you thought after Lawrence Maroney, he'd never draft a running back. And he got one too.
It took him years to trust running backs enough to get one again in the first round.
Now the question with this guy is, what are the plans for him? Because obviously, I'm sure they're projecting Josh Gordon to be not coming back. They lost Rob Gronkowski, so many thought they would project to be taking a tight end at some point in this draft. They didn't, like you confirmed. So to me, a 4.53 wide receiver who's only 6'2", again, they know more than I do, but off the bat, it doesn't seem like the greatest selection to me.
I mean, I think saying only 6'2" is a little bit of a misnomer.
These cornerbacks are getting bigger.
No, they're getting smaller. If you look,
so?
Yeah, if you look at them year to year, I think they're staying in the 6 foot, maybe 5'11" type range. And this is a guy who right now, without
Well, when I say smaller, I'm thinking like 5'9", like Darryl Green style. But
Oh, yeah.
6'2", or 6'2" to 6'0" in the effectiveness,
but I mean,
it can matter.
yeah, I mean, having 3 inches on a cornerback, especially when you have a passer as accurate as Brady that can hit these guys, and Harry's specialty is catching bad balls and the one-handed catch. So, you slot him in right now, assuming Josh Gordon doesn't come back. Harry is the number 2 receiver on this team behind Edelman. So he is going to have the role of, he doesn't have the speed to stretch the field, but he is going to have to be that wide-out type guy until they find somebody faster, or if Gordon comes back again.
Well, because they lost Chris Hogan, so they
Yep.
got Edelman scatting around, and they got
And Amendola's gone, too.
and Amendola's gone. So they've got basically Edelman and N'Keal Harry at this point, unless Dorsett resigned. I don't think he has.
No, but I mean, they could probably keep him for cheap. Maybe they can find a guy off the scrap heap. Maybe they bring back like a Malcolm Mitchell type.
Well, he retired, but yeah, I get what you're
is he-
saying. Yeah,
is
he
he done?
had just too many injuries.
Oh,
yeah.
okay.
But I get what you're saying, kind of a lanky receiver who could also stretch the field. And
Yeah.
again, we can go back to the argument on Gronk. Still, whether he's 70 to 100%, even the decoy factor is huge.
Oh, for sure.
For a guy like that. And that's why I thought maybe Irv Smith out of Alabama, he was basically a wide receiver, a tight end who was kind of Jimmy Graham-like. That would have been huge.
Oh, man. Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, and then also the other thing to talk about with the Patriots draft is they took a quarterback in the 4th round. They took Jarrett Stidham, who many believe if he didn't have as bad of a year at Auburn in his senior year, he might have been a first-round pick last year. But he came back, and it just went all horribly wrong for him.
Yeah, I don't actually know too much about him, so I saw that the Patriots drafted a quarterback. They do that about every year. Every other year they pick somebody. Don't necessarily know if he's going to be the heir apparent.
That's always the question: is how fucking long is Brady going to play?
Yeah, and the other question is Patriots number 5 current number 3 quarterback, the rookie out of LSU. I should know this. Etlinger.
Danny Etling.
Yeah, Etling. These
They like him too.
Yeah, and
we know it's not Brian Hoyer. Let's put it that way.
No. Hoyer is a stopgap in the worst case scenario.
So there's nothing wrong with competition. If they keep these 2 guys on, they may put Stidham or Etling on the practice squad at that point.
Yeah, and they could. So let's see. He's
Started his career at Baylor. He actually was really, really good at Baylor. Then had an injury, and another guy at Baylor took his job. Moved over to Auburn. Had a really good season the first year at Auburn. Should have came out, whether he was ready or not, he should have came out, basically foreshadowing the fact that his medical senior year did not go very well.
Yeah, and if you look at him, he had just about the same number of attempts between 2017 and 2018. Maybe the same number of touchdowns, 1 fewer interception in the most recent year. Not the worst stats in the world, but I don't know. It doesn't fill me with a lot of confidence that he is the actual heir apparent. I think this is Belichick just kind of using a 4th round pick to take a stab at a guy and see what happens.
And I've always said, and I think I don't know if Belichick does it every year, but I've always said every year you should take a quarterback. And I've said that, and I've maintained it for years. If it doesn't work out, you take a guy in the 6th, and he doesn't work out, no big deal. You lost a 6th-round pick. But if you take a guy in 6th, he turns into fucking Tom Brady, then you're the fucking genius.
Yeah, exactly.
And I would say, not disrespecting 6 Super Bowls and everything else, but a lot of what the success has been is, and a lot of Belichick's in Belichick we trust, because he's got a lot of whiffs on the draft as well, as many as hitting.
Yeah,
but he'll always be fine with he'll always have a pass with taking Tom Brady.
Yeah,
with 199.
And my father actually wants Robert Kraft to step in and take the draft away from Belichick because he thinks that Belichick is that bad at drafting.
Well, it's hard to say. I mean, like Aaron Hernandez, you have Sony Michel, you have Tom Brady, you have Rob Gronkowski. I think Rob Gronkowski was like a 3rd or 4th round pick as well.
Yeah, they took Hernandez and Gronk in the same draft. One went in the 2nd round, one went in the 3rd. I don't remember which was which. I think Gronk went in the 3rd because of the back injuries that he
fell
had
at
Arizona.
A little bit. And, I mean, you have Julian Edelman. I think he was an undrafted free agent. Or was he a 7th-round pick?
He was either undrafted or 7th, yeah. It was
I mean,
way down
for
there.
every guy, they've had a lot of misses, but at the same time, I mean, look at all these hits. I mean, fucking, what's his name? Nate Solder they took in the first round, I believe. He had a really productive career when he was not injured. I mean, he hasn't whiffed so much more than he's hit, I guess is what I'm saying.
Yeah. I think you'd have to go through.
I mean, who are the big whiffs? Lawrence Maroney.
Yeah, Maroney was a rough one.
I mean, I don't know a lot of their first round. I'm trying to think of a lot of their first round picks that they've had recently. I mean, let me see if I can pull it up on the Yahoo search. Patriots.
I mean, and this is the kind of thing where I think you'd have to go through
Every single round.
Even just because I think it's unfair to compare, how many first-round guys make the team compared to how many seventh-round guys. So I think you have to go year by year and say percentage of first-round picks that played, say a year, 2 years, 3 years in the NFL, however long you want to do it.
Perfect website.
And then,
all 17 first-round picks rated from first to worst.
Oh, there we go.
So his worst pick was Dominic Easley, which he tore his ACL. Yeah, that maybe picking him in the first round might have not been the best. No, it might have not have been the best. They're saying his second worst pick is Isaiah Wynn, who tore his Achilles, but he will be here this year. Yep. So it's almost like getting 2 first-round picks. Then they have Lawrence Maroney. They're saying that Michelle is one of the worst first-round picks just because it's too early to really grade him, even though he went for 931 as a rookie.
Fair. All right.
Next one is Brandon Merriweather, which
Merriweather had a few productive years.
Yeah, he made a few Pro Bowls as the Patriots, but he was cut. I mean, I guess that's what they're saying. To be cut after 4 years.
Okay.
Malcolm Brown, I would not agree with that. He was pretty consistent in my opinion. I would agree with Daniel Graham. I would say that was a pretty busty pick.
Yeah, okay.
Ben Watson, they picked him last in the 2004 in the first round. Ty Warren, I don't even remember who that is.
Yeah, neither do I. That should be a much worse pick than the rest of them.
Nate Solder is number 7. Nate Solder is number 8. Donta Hightower number 7. Gerard Mayo was number 6, even though injuries cut his.
Yeah, Mayo was good when he played, though.
Yeah, for sure. Chandler Jones, Devin McCourty, Richard Seymour, Logan Mankins, and can you guess who number 1 might be?
Oh my God. Seymour.
I said
no, you said Seymour. Fuck.
His name, part of his name is actually a utensil that makes him so fat.
Oh, Wilford. Well played, sir.
So, yeah, you look at that, I would say, like, with the exception of Daniel Graham, and that's about it. Ty Warren. Daniel Graham and Ty Warren, everything else had a contribution. Malcolm Brown, unfortunately, is not going to be back, but I think he could have been better as well. But a lot of these picks, like I said, number 28, number 31, number 32, number 21, number 32, they're picking at the back end of the round.
Oh, yeah.
The only pick above 10 or 10 or above is Gerard Mayo. I guess Richard Seymour in 2001. But, yeah, so, they're picking in the back of all these fucking drafts. So, to have that success. And, again, the first round is really where you're graded the most as far as success and failure. So to say that that's a failure as a drafter, I don't know if I agree with that. But especially with everything he's gotten out of Gronkowski, Hernandez, Julian Edelman, and obviously pick number 199 in 2000. So
yeah.
All right,
that's a good one.
Let's wrap it up there with anything. Anything else you got? That was a big podcast.
Yeah, this has been going a little long. No, I think I'm going to give the listeners a break and just say...
now that your ears are bleeding, you get a break from us.
Let's go Bruins, and we'll see how the rest of the NHL playoffs shape up. And I am going to a couple of baseball games this year. I'm traveling down to Arizona to see a couple of Diamondbacks games in mid-June.
Are you coming with us too in at the end of August too? Red Sox Angels?
That one, I don't know.
Talk to the wife. Maybe she can go to a quilting convention.
I still got to find out what's going on with like classwork and all that stuff because I'm way behind on my dissertation stuff. But
shit happens.
We'll
take it next year.
Yeah.
All right. Well, let's thank the sponsors: 12 Ounce Sports Radio, Vegas Puckline Apparel, ChaiPoker.com, and Eric on the Web Productions. We want to thank all of you guys for listening, and obviously you can hear our podcast on 12 Ounce Sports Radio every Mondays and Wednesdays at 8 p.m. And also, you can hear us at VegasSquares.com. Click the podcast tab, click the listen now, and you can listen to all of our podcasts anytime you want. They're all on there from episode 1 all the way to, I believe this is episode 123.
Wow.
Holy cannoli. So, again, we want to thank you for listening. Thank the sponsors again. For Spike, I am Aaron. We appreciate you listening, and we will catch you on the next episode.